Good afternoon, everybody out there in Irish Breakdown land. I am Vince Siderio. That is Brian Driscoll, and it's the OGs. We're here. It is a Thursday. It is the start of spring practice. And so Brian and I were both at spring practice, along with Sean Davis, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So IB was holding it down in the best way that we know how. And we are bringing the report to you. And so lots to talk about, obviously. It's day one of practice, so it's the first time seeing a bunch of guys running around doing their thing. Again, as a reminder, it was a non-padded practice. Okay, so only so much you can glean from a non-padded practice, so let's keep that in mind. And then also, as a little note, there are 89, I believe, 88 scholarship players on the team right now. We can't mention all of them. Okay,
we can't see all of them. It
right,
was an hour and a half practice.
It went so fast.
Yes, and look, in order for us to have something to say about every player, we're either telling you about the one rep we saw,
right,
and
right.
projecting that to an entire practice, or we're not able to watch anyone enough to give anything of real value. So,
correct.
The point of saying this is just because we don't mention someone doesn't mean they're injured or that they didn't have a good practice.
Right.
So just want to keep that in mind as we kick things off. So if we don't mention somebody, we're not forgetting anybody. If we don't mention somebody, we just didn't see enough of them to have a real good glimpse of what they did. And also 100%. We focused today a lot on the skill players. Since there is no pads, there's only so much you can really gain from the lines and the linebackers, but we will have some things to say about those groups as well. But there's a reason why we're going to be more skill player focused in today's show as well. But Vince, I'm just fired up to be back talking ball, man.
Yeah, it's always good to get out and just see a practice and kind of put the speculation to the side for a little bit, because we actually have something to talk about specifically and some tangible evidence to relay to all of you, and super excited about it. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to talk a little bit about Marcus Freeman's press conference first, some news and notes that kind of came out of that. Then we're going to dive into the offense. We'll go position by position, what we saw, things like that. And then we'll do the same thing on the defensive side of the ball. And then we'll throw in a little bit of special teams, because they did a very little bit of special teams, but they did kick some field goals and they did some punt returns and stuff like that. So we'll touch on that as well. But a lot to get to today, Brian. I'm fired up about it. It went so fast. I looked at my watch. All of a sudden, they were gathering in the middle with Marcus Freeman. I was like, "It's over." I was kind of shocked. It went so fast.
It was a good hour and a half practice. Like you said, though, the pace was really good. They were.
Yes, it was.
There was like one period in the middle where they took a couple minutes to like get some water and just catch their breath, and then
it was about a
right back at
period.
It. Yeah,
about a
right back
period.
At it. A lot of reps today. For a practice only went an hour and a half.
No doubt about it. A lot of reps. So let's jump into the press conference, Brian. Some very interesting things. First, let's talk about the injuries. So, in other words, the guys that are not going to participate in spring ball. I believe there were 5 names. You want to go ahead and give those names, and we can kind of go from there.
A couple of them were expected. Did he mention Rocco Spindler?
He did
in
not.
That press conference.
He did not. I saw him out there, though.
I'm very curious about that one, but he didn't mention Rocco. So, because like Rocco had, I thought, an ACL tear in
really?
November.
I didn't know that. Okay.
But maybe I mistook what he said. But the 5 he said was Mitchell Evans, which is expected, Kevin Bauman, which is expected, Aiden Gobaira, disappointing. I was hoping he could get back in time for spring ball. He did get hurt in August last year. And then Armel Mukum, who has a shoulder injury, and then Logan Thomas. So those Logan Thomas is probably a year away, but I was really hoping we could get a chance to see some of Armel Mukum and Aiden Gobaira during spring practice this spring. So it's going to be disappointing to see them. And then Jordan Clark, he said, is fine. He just said he had a little bit of quad tightness, so he went through drills and stretch, and then they held him out of individual stuff. He's a 60-year senior. It's one of those ones where it's like, look, dude.
Right.
Missing the first couple, the first spring practice. And again, they're not going to have another practice till I think the 20th of March.
So there's no need to get somebody more injured or more hurt.
Not a 60-year senior.
It's not necessary. Yeah. It's not necessary. But I will say this, though, it did give some other guys some opportunities, and we'll touch on that when we get to that.
And so when you talk about the injuries, again, he did not say about Rocco Spindler being out all spring, but Rocco was not there today, not practicing today.
I could have sworn he was on the second team.
No, I didn't see him there.
I thought I saw
Didn't see him
50.
there. He may have, but I didn't see him there.
Okay, I wrote down 50 with the second team.
Yeah.
So
I had 77 and 72 were the two guards that I had.
see, I had 50 on the field before 77.
Gotcha.
But
I didn't
again,
see that.
it could have.
But that'd be great if that's accurate.
Okay,
Because
I
that
could be
means
wrong.
his injury wasn't as severe as I thought, and would mean he might be back and competing for one of those two guard spots, which would be huge. But yeah, I did not see him in any of the periods
And you
today.
are most likely right about that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
I quickly wrote down everybody's numbers, and
during that period of time, you were watching the offense and I was watching the defense, and then we kind of flipped it later in practice. So that might be there. I'm going to look into that. I'm actually going to ask about that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because now I'm really curious if my eyes are playing tricks on me, which is always a possibility. But either way, let's see. Any other injury news that he had brought up? Those were the 5 guys that are out of spring completely. And then, like you said, Clark has some quad tightness, and then he mentioned Jordan Faison. He was there, but he was not dressed. It is what they're doing. It's in combination with the lacrosse team, and they're just kind of he didn't need to be out there today, so he was there going through his mental reps and things like that. He's got a big game against Ohio State here coming up this weekend, and so they just decided, you know what, he doesn't really need to practice today.
It is really funny. I did not recognize Jordan at first when we were down on the field because he doesn't look out of equipment like your typical Notre Dame recruit. Let's just be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, this is why you can't judge things like that,
man,
because that dude, like, he doesn't look like a guy that you'd say, oh, that guy's an elite athlete. Like, he just doesn't have that look. Like, when you see certain guys, like when you see Benjamin Morrison in just shorts and a t-shirt, you're like, that guy looks like an elite athlete. When you see Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, you're like, that guy looks like an elite athlete. You know what I mean? Like Riley Mills, you're like, that guy looks like he could be playing 2 guard for Notre Dame's basketball team, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you see Jordan Faison, you don't think elite athlete when you just look at him, but he is.
But then you watch him play football and lacrosse, and you're like, he's pretty good.
This is just kind of funny seeing it, because I honestly was like, there's a couple times I was kind of joking with somebody. I was like, at first, as I was far away, I was like, who's the new GA receivers? Like, that dude looks like he can still play. And I looked up, oh, it's Bo Collins.
Bo Collins, yeah.
Then I was like, that team manager over there looks like he moves around pretty well, man. Oh, that's Jordan Faison. So it's like, all right, we're good. We're good. But it was good to be back there, man. But yeah, as far as those are the primary injuries that he talked about. Then there's some coaching moves today, Vince, which some of them we knew.
Sure.
It was made official that Chad Bowden is basically the general manager, and was it associate
athletic director. That's kind of how they do it at Notre Dame.
He's the general manager. Just so whatever. It's just lame that Notre Dame does that way.
It's Notre Dame.
But I want to be clear. Chad has basically been doing this role for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's what it does now is because of the way that the high school recruiting and the portal and the management of your team roster. It's like it can be treated as 3 things, and it can kind of get lost, but now it's all under one umbrella officially. Right. But this has been going on since Chad took over as the director of recruiting. And just so people understand, like, Chad has been very involved in transfers. I mean, you could see when I tweeted the story out today, Bo Collins' dad retweeted it and was like, hey, what a great
game.
So clearly Chad was involved in that recruitment. And so people have asked, like, okay, is this going to change his role? Is he going to still be involved in recruiting? His role doesn't change at all. He's finally being paid and recognized position-wise for the work he's already been doing. And so that's the thing, is you're not going to see him being away from recruiting. I mean, that's what he's best at. But now what it does is it brings talent acquisition under the 2 spheres of recruiting, high school recruiting, and then portal recruiting. And then managing your own team and roster have to work together. Mm-hmm. And what this does is this makes sure everybody working in those different areas is reporting to Chad. And now it's up to Chad to make sure that everything's good. So if you're sitting there in late August, and you're like, dude, we got 89 scholarship players, that's on Chad.
Yeah,
if it's like we got 72 scholarship players, that's on Chad. But that's not going to happen, because now there's going to be a lot more, okay, everybody – you know where the buck stops, right? The buck stops with Marcus Freeman, but what's that last step right before Marcus Freeman? it's Chad Bowden. And then
Right.
Chad's carrying out Coach Freeman's vision for the program. So that's the thing. It brings everything together that was already happening. And now Chad is just being paid and recognized position-wise accordingly.
Right.
But the biggest change today is his role and salary, not the job he's doing on a day-to-day basis.
Which is one of the ways that they were able to keep him at Notre Dame.
I mean, and here's another one. It's not just Chad, but if Chad's just recruiting director, I'm promising you, people are going to be coming for Dre Brown, because Dre Brown is quickly gaining a reputation as someone who is an up-and-comer in the recruiting world. And you've seen Chad have Dre get more and more involved in recruiting players the last couple of years. And so this now allows Dre to become the director of recruiting. So now Chad will be able to delegate some of the aspects of managing that staff on a day-to-day basis onto Dre. And now Dre will get a pay raise as well. And so it's just a reward for a job well done by those two guys, but also it ensures that Notre Dame can keep their recruiting operation intact.
Yes.
Because it is a strong operation.
It's a very strong operation. So it was good to see all of that and kind of cementing these guys for, the very near future and hopefully in the distant future as well, as long as Marcus Freeman is there. So I did like that a lot. And then there's also some other coaching tweaks that took place. Obviously, the running backs coach, right? He's going to be the associate head coach, right? And so and Marcus Freeman kind of went into some detail about that, basically saying, look, he's going to be a head coach here. He's going to take some things off my plate. Things are looking, that he's involved in these head coaching meetings. Like, he's taking on more of a leadership role so that when he is going to be a head coach, which is what Marcus Freeman flat out said, that he's going to have, more of that responsibility under his belt and be ready to take on that role.
And Coach McCullough said that when he was hired. That's his goal. That's his next step. That's why he's turned down. I mean, I've heard at least in the last few years, at least a dozen NFL teams. That's just what I've heard that have reached out to him trying to get him to go back to the NFL. Some college teams are doing that. But the reason is because he came here with the intention of, I want to build these young men up, but then I want to put myself in position to become a head football coach. And the thing I respect about Coach McCullough is he was very honest with Coach Freeman about that through the interview process. And Coach Freeman brought him here knowing that's what we're trying to do. And so props to Coach McCullough for being an upfront and straight guy, which anyone that knows him will know, like, that's kind of, if anything, you're kind of like, that was pretty direct, dude. You know what I mean? Like, he's a very open and honest guy. And I respect that about him. And props to Coach Freeman for not being threatened by that. An experienced veteran coach, an NFL background, that wants to be head coach. If you're a person of lesser ego, you're not going to bring that guy onto your staff in the first place. And then you're not going to give him more authority as he's established himself. The previous head coach would have looked at Dylan McCullough as a threat, not an asset. And, because he does want to be a head coach, because the players do respect him, because he does get so much recognition from fans, whereas Coach Freeman's like, yeah, I want that. And now let's get you this more role, because that's what Coach McCullough wants to be. And honestly,
he's actively helping them too, which is
everything
really
you want in a college coach. He cares about young men. Yes, he knows football and he can recruit and he can, and all that stuff, but he's someone who takes a great deal of pride. I mean, he's a father. You see him all the time tweeting about different things with his kids, he's what you want it to be. So there's hopefully Notre Dame can go out. Here's the thing. Notre Dame's just got to go out there and win, right? At the end of the day, that's the big key. They got to go out there and win, because if they go out there and win, then all of a sudden teams start trying to poach their coaches even more than they already are. Sure. And that's going to be a big thing for there. And then, of course, Max Bulla full-time. Did you talk about the Marty Biaggi?
I was just going to throw. Okay. I was going to.
That's an interesting one.
Here's how I was going to roll into that. Right, we're going to. Mike Mickens, we know, is going to take care of the entire secondary, and so he's adding safeties to his role. And then we all kind of assume that they would go out and get a graduate assistant to help out with the safeties, which still may be the case. We know that they're working on that at the moment, but Marty Biaggi, the special teams coordinator at Notre Dame, is going to also help Mike Mickens with the secondary, which I thought was fascinating. And Coach Freeman kind of went into some detail about that during the press conference, basically saying, look, I've had conversations with Marty about, kind of expanding his role a little bit, growing him as a coach. He's already got kind of the special teams thing down. And then to make yourself a more well-rounded coach, you got to be able to coach other positions and be able to do things. And he's
Yeah.
giving him that opportunity.
I have a buddy of mine who's now the special teams coach at Penn State. And we coached together at Christopher Newport. And I think that's something that's kind of hindered him as a coach, honestly, in advancing the way I think he should be advancing. Because when he and I coached together, he was a special teams coordinator, but he was also our DB coach. And he was very good. But you get to these levels and people view you as a special teams ace, and that's kind of all they look at you as.
They put you in a
and
box.
it can be somewhat limiting, you know. So he goes to a division, he leaves, I think, Ball State to go to Division II school. And I think it was Edinburgh. He's there like 2 years. And in the second year, he wins National Coach of the Year award and then goes back to D1. And it's just same thing, back to being a special teams guy. So if Coach Biaggi, it can be limiting if you're viewed as just that.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously this is a thing that, as you said, can help him. But it's also not new, as he mentioned. I mean, he has coached. He was a defensive coordinator in 2011 at Arkansas Pine Bluff as an FBS school. He coached DBs for 3 years at Southern. He coached cornerbacks for a year at South Dakota. So this isn't like a shocker where you're hoping to get the special teams guy, learn how to coach another position. He's done this at the FCS level before.
Mm-hmm.
And he's helping Mike Mickens. He's not the safeties coach. Now, hopefully, if he can, really find a groove at this position, that's going to be a huge asset, because then that answers the question we talked about yesterday, about bringing in a GA and that kind of thing. I would still do that.
Sure.
Because there's going to be times where Marty Biaggi is going to need to be doing other things or focusing on other things. I would still like to see that. But this move makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. And the other fascinating part of this whole thing was Marcus Freeman said that he and Marty had discussions last year about him helping out with linebackers before kind of Max Bulla kind of took the bull by the horns and proved that he could pretty much do it himself. Obviously kind of with the assistance of Al Golden.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if that was before he hired Max Bulla.
Okay, that's a possibility.
Because, there was that weird period where like James Laurinaitis was going to come back and then he left, and then they eventually hired Max Bulla. I wonder if that was kind of during that time that they thought about that. And so I'm curious about that. But yeah, it's an interesting deal for sure.
Yeah, I obviously Marcus Freeman has a lot of faith in Marty Biaggi, because he's like, hey, we could do linebackers. Oh no, we're gonna do secondary. Like, I think that's pretty cool, to be honest with you. So that'll be good.
My understanding when he was hired was that was something that was attractive to them, is that he's not just a special teams coach.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that he has coached other positions, but also he's known as a good recruiter. And a lot of times special teams coaches are just special teams coaches, right? They're kind of like the nerdy kind of go do your thing kind of guy.
Yeah.
But with Biaggi, because even though he was a specialist in college, I mean, he was I think a punter in college. So he wasn't a position player. Because like my friend Justin played safety at Bucknell. So he was a actual football player. I don't mean that disrespectfully.
Wow.
But I'm just saying. But, that was for you, Vince. But I mean, Coach Biaggi was not that. But you're seeing a guy that can bring more to the table than just special teams.
Yeah.
Like I said, he can recruit. We've heard good things about that. He can do this. So that's it. It makes a better hire. I think this is, for me, a reason why I would like to see them move to 11 assistants, 5 offense, 5 defense, 1 special teams,
and 1 special teams. Yeah,
different conversation for a different day. But the other thing was interesting is somebody asked him about Mike Denbrock, and he just starts smirking. He's like, "It's a really confident dude, or it's a really competitive dude,"
and he is.
And you're just like, "Yep, Mike Denbrock very well," which he does, because they worked together for 4 years. But you just see Denbrock out; he's got his hat on backwards, and he's just constantly barking. Different things, and I love the comment where like the offense had hit a deep ball and the players were kind of going crazy, and Coach Denbrock was like, "Get back in the huddle and get used to it. That's what we do." It wasn't like trash talking per se.
It
was like, but it was to his players. But it was like, hey, this is who we are. It's like that one scene from the Showtime deal back in 2015. Where he's looking to play, he's like, "There's a lot of great stuff here, man." It's just like that. That's what he is. You know what I mean? But he said it to another player, so it's about confidence. It's about showing confidence, and that's the thing that gets lost in that comment was, this isn't just about Mike Denbrock talking trash. This is about Mike Denbrock establishing a level of confidence in what we do. Like, you should not be flipping out over us getting a deep ball. You should just be like, "That's what we do."
Yeah.
That's who we are.
Right.
You know, this
He's
isn't a
a super
shocker when Chris Mitchell makes a freaky play, which we'll talk about. This is who we are.
Right.
And that's that everyday confidence. And Al Golden did a great job of that with the defense last year. It's like, this is what we do. This is who we are. And now Mike Denbrock's bringing, because he just has that. But the thing is, Vince, at the end of the day, that only works because he just oozes confidence.
Oh,
like that's the thing about Denbrock is like, that is, I almost said cocky, but that's not what I meant. I meant to say confident, but he has a belief in himself and a belief in what they're doing. And you need that conviction because as much as I love Jared Parker, like I didn't always feel that from him. And so I don't know if everybody else felt that about him. You know, even though Jared Parker was confident, he didn't necessarily, he was more just a real polite guy and real nice guy and real Southern guy and just, you know, didn't want to rock the boat and didn't want the, you know, the way he was hired. I think there was a hesitancy to just really take hold of it. That's not Mike Denbrock, man. This is like, we're going to do this my way. And in case you didn't, you want to check my resume,
right?
We led the nation in scoring last year. So this is who we are. This is what we're going to do. Buy in. And so far, so good.
Can I tell a funny story about Mike Denbrock?
Of course.
So my son had the opportunity to kind of hang with Mike Denbrock when he was at LSU for a myriad of reasons, but they're hanging out. And one of my son's guilty pleasures is pickleball. He's a 16-year-old kid who loves to play pickleball, which is weird, but he's got a lot of friends in their 60s. It's a very interesting combination. But anyway, him and Denbrock started talking trash to each other about playing pickleball. And it was hilarious. It was absolutely, it was over FaceTime, and they're talking trash to each other. And Denbrock was like, I will fly you out here once I put pickleball courts in my backyard to whoop your butt. I was dying. I was dying. Yeah. So, I mean, that just tells you he's talking trash to a 16-year-old kid about playing pickleball. He's confident, man. Like, I always found that to be really, really funny. So,
well, I think the other thing too, Vince, when you look at it, it's one of those things where it's like that's what you want, though, right? That's it. I remember hearing the story about the Denver Broncos back in the 90s where John Elway just never lost a pool. Nobody could beat him at pool. And he had a pool table at his house. And one day, I think they said like Bubby Brister beat him in a game of pool. And the next time they went back to John Elway's house, he had sold the pool table.
Did he really? He was the backup cornerback and he beat him in pool.
Yeah, but John Elway, I mean, it's just that competitiveness, right? But that's important because that oozes the players. And you saw that today, Vince, as we'll get into when we dive into the offense. I'll explain why that matters. But yeah, a lot of changes, different looking team in a lot of ways, even though there's a lot of similar faces.
For sure.
It's just in today, practice-wise, we saw Mike Mickens with the corners for most of the time. Now, they did a lot of stuff together, but he was with the corners a lot, so that was good to see. And then final coaching note, Mike Brown is going to be a favorite of mine as a position coach. I'm just telling you right now, like he is what I want a receivers coach to be. He does what, you know, it's everything he does. You can look at and say, I can tell you exactly the route and the concepts that drill is going to, or the skill set that drill is going to improve. There's no like, let's hop on this foot and then turn around and do the hokey pokey and you turn, you know what I mean? Like, this stuff that's going to help them, you know, and that was my final little coaching note today. That was like, okay, this is good.
He found a coaching point for every player after every rep, which,
he's always coaching.
I mean, I really like that,
but never heard him, but you never hear him.
Right.
He brings a lot of positive energy to the table. Agreed. Like somebody called me today, a buddy might call me. He's like, what'd you think of Coach Brown? He goes, do you think he's a star in the making? And I said, I don't know about all that. Like, I don't know what that means. I said, but if I'm an offensive coordinator, he's exactly what I want in the receivers coach. A lot of energy, a lot of positive energy, constantly coaching, holding guys to a high standard. And every drill he does has a direct application to us running our offense at a high level.
Right.
It's not clinic tape. It's not all that other kind of stuff. It's this drill is going to make you a better route runner. This drill is going to make you better at this part of playing football. And those are things that I like. It was good to see.
So a nice smooth transition here. That was not smooth, but a smooth transition here. Talking about wide receivers, let's jump in and talk about the offense. As a quick reminder to everybody, we're not going to do a full mailbag on this show, but if you want to throw a super chat at us, obviously we will do that when we are done. So this is going to be a super chat only type of show. But let's jump into the offense, Brian. A lot of fun to watch. And I made the analogy the other day on the IB Nation Sports Talk show of the wide receiver room. Since we're talking wide receivers, let's just jump into the wide receivers. The wide receiver room and the like men's basketball roster are very similar. Like complete turnover. Let's see what you got kind of a situation. You know what I mean? Like the wide receiver room that we saw today at practice was almost unrecognizable to the wide receiver room that existed in the past, like last year. I mean, just from a personnel standpoint,
it was wild.
And then you add into what we actually saw them doing, and this is going to be a fun group to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, so we're just that's how good the receivers were. We're diving into them before we talk about the quarterbacks. I mean, it was, and that's not a shot at Vince at all, at you. It was like, okay, Vince knows my heart. He knows where I'm at.
I do.
The big thing, Vince, is it just was such a different looking group. Not just, so it's like okay, Jaden Harrison and Chris Mitchell are replacing Chris Tyree and Tobias Merriweather, practically speaking.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But like those guys were pretty fast. And both, Tobias averaged over like 22 yards a catch, and Chris was like around 20 yards a catch. So it's not like they're replacing these guys that were running 4.6s and 4.7s, right? But just the pace at which they go about things was so much different, right? So when I say there just was a different gear at receiver today, it's not so much that, they didn't have a 4.3 guy last year. Now they have one. They had a 4.3 guy last year.
Yeah, they did.
And Tobias in the spring was really good at making it. It's just a different pace. Mm-hmm. It's a different burst off the line. It's a different accelerate gear. It's just everything is about it. But the other thing too is last year, those two guys stood out. Like they were noticeably faster than everyone else. That's not true of these two guys. Like they're noticeably explosive. Like you could just see the way that Chris Mitchell comes off the line. Mm-hmm. A little inconsistent with his takeoff, which, learning it, because you got to remember at FIU, Chris Mitchell lined up on one side of the field. He was their left outside receiver.
Interesting.
That's it.
Okay.
So there's some times he's learning to plant drive off the other foot. You know what I mean? And those things are going to happen, to be expected. But just overall, like when he comes off, like you could tell the corners were having a hard time adjusting to his speed. I mean, he was coming off and just running by Jaden Mickey and running by guys that we know can play. Mm-hmm. And even beat Cam Williams a couple times, or Christian Gray a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Christian Gray is really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So he's without a doubt their fastest outside corner. Micah Bell's an outside corner. And we'll talk about him a little bit. But man, you just could see a gear with those two guys. But then you throw in like Caleb Smith. And Caleb Smith is basically, in today's practice, took on the role of what Rico Flores did as far as that other outside guy. Different kind of athlete, smooth. I mean, with KK Smith, it was interesting, Vince, because it almost like you don't realize how fast he's moving because he's so smooth. Mm-hmm. And it's just really impressive. But Chris Mitchell, back to him, Vince, he looked like their guy day one.
Agreed.
I mean, I think first one-on-one rep, they just ran like second one rep. They just ran a straight go route. Right. And was a 7-on-7. It was 7-on-7. First 7-on-7 rep, just go route, drop back, bomb, touchdown. Just ran right by Jaden Mickey. Guys, we've seen Jaden Mickey play against Ohio State and USC. And I mean, we've seen him play against those teams, and nobody ran by him like that.
Right.
And one of them he ran by him was like on a stutter go, and Jaden didn't bite on the stutter at all. He just ran by him. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just ran by him. And Jaden Harrison brings some juice too. But Chris Mitchell, too, the thing that surprised me, Vince, was his ball skills really stood out to me today. It didn't surprise me because I saw it on film, but like how would it translate to Notre Dame?
Right.
The play of the day was a heck of a play by Riley Leonard too. And I didn't see it at first. I ended up seeing that because I was watching secondary. Riley Leonard throws this duck about 35, 40 yards down the field, just wobbly duck. And I'm thinking, well, that was uninspiring. Well, then you see on the highlight, the ball was basically like bounced to him.
Yeah.
So he has to kind of pick it up off the ground and just quickly throw it because it's the go route. And he just gave his guy a shot. And Chris Mitchell jumps. He's behind Jaden Mickey, jumps over Jaden Mickey, and doesn't go over him like pass interference, just goes up for him, outplays him for the ball, high points. You said it, Vince, high points it perfectly. As they come down, Jaden stumbles for just a second. Chris Mitchell comes down clean and boom, touchdown.
Gone.
And you're like, that's what we didn't see at all last season. And we saw that 5 times today.
Yes.
Jaden Thomas completely outplaying Benjamin Morrison, who outside of that rep was phenomenal.
Correct.
And he was actually really good on that rep.
He was right there.
But I think the ball was thrown by Riley Leonard.
I think so.
Or Angeli, one of the two. But it was a pretty good ball. But Jaden Thomas just had out playing for the ball.
Right.
We saw that several times today. Vince.
I think it was Angeli, actually.
Angeli?
Based on
couldn't remember who it was.
Here,
but we saw that multiple times. We never saw that from this receiving corps last year in spring or fall camp, where they would just go outplay people for the football. And I'm talking about a guy in Chris Mitchell who's barely 175, 180 pounds.
Yeah.
Just going up and outplaying people for the ball. So, yeah, we can talk about the speed and all that from this group, and it was really impressive. But this group competed for the football in a way that, there was one play where I think it was Deion Colsey almost catches this ball and they got tipped twice because he just was locked in on it and he did not take his eyes off the ball, and it got tipped twice, and he goes up for it and almost catches it. And you're like, dude, that guy wanted the ball. So that was the big thing for me is, we can talk about the speed, Vince, but the precision with which they were running their routes on day one and the way in which they competed for the football today against the ones was really, really good to see.
Well, and I really was impressed by the ball skills of the wide receivers. They have enlarged the catch radius of the room, I will say, because, we always talk about catch radius of a guy, with long arms and the whole deal. There were not a lot of balls that hit the ground today. And a lot of that was because of the wide receivers. They were getting low balls. They were getting high balls. They were adjusting to the football. They were competing at the highest, point for the football. The ball skills just felt better with this group. It just was more smooth. They weren't fighting the ball like we've seen in the past a little bit. They were just very, very smooth catching the football. I was very impressed by that.
I'll tell you this, Vince. First of all, Mike Brown has a hose. So,
really?
Yeah, he can throw. He puts some zip on it.
Okay.
But you're talking about that. But there's a drill. You remember last year I kept complaining to you about the jump ball drills that they did. I'm like, these jump ball drills they're doing are for that maybe happens once a year type of play. And they weren't doing actual jump ball drills. We get out there and he's got them running literally. Here's the sideline. They're literally running their route this far off that line. And he throws them a jump ball. They've got to go up and get it. And then he wants them to bring 2 feet down.
Right. Not 1, 2.
Right. And so why is he doing that? Well, number one, because if you get 2 in, there's no replay question. But the second part is you always kind of ask a little bit more from your players in drills than you want them to do on the field, because that's going to then turn into a really good 1-foot catch in the game. But the point was, it was teaching field awareness, high pointing the football, and timing as jumpers. And he was throwing it with juice on those balls. It wasn't like lobbing it up. It was like they had to go up and get it quick and come down. And again, it was those practical drills that you then see. Because remember when Mike Elko got here, and they would always do that turnover circuit.
Yes, love that.
And I remember when he was doing a clinic talk that year. This is before they got rid of the coaches clinics.
Yeah.
And he went there and he went through every single one of those drills. He would show the drill on film, and you could hear some of the high school coaches grumbling like, "Oh, I wanted to talk about the 4-2-5," and you could just hear. I think Elko started to hear it too. So this is when he was going over the circuit. So he put some film in. He's like, I know you guys want to talk about this. He goes, but this is the stuff that matters. And he would go through and he was anticipating this. He showed every drill they did, and then immediately would show 3 plays where that drill was utilized in a game to cause a turnover. And he's like, this may not seem sexy to you guys, but this is why we do this.
Mm-hmm.
And today, when I'm just watching the receivers, you're like, I watched them do that rep. When I watch them run comebacks and then accelerate downhill, I'm like, they did that exact drill in practice today. And you're like, okay, they're taking to the coaching. And that's a good thing to see, because, like, look, there's going to be ups and downs from this receiver group, but the three things we saw today that are things that you can replicate every day is a lot of speed, a lot more size. Like, everybody's 6 feet or taller now, basically.
Right.
Except for the one guy who isn't there. I think Jaden Thomas at like 5'10 and a half, 5'11 is like the only sub 6 foot guy that was there today. They play at a really good pace they play with urgency. That's probably a better way to explain it. And then they compete for the football, things that were lacking last season. So that's why I was a big reason why I was so impressed with what I saw today, was because it just, the way they went about their business was so much different than what we've seen in quite some time. Really, since Mike Denbrock was the receivers coach. Really is the last time we saw that. You know,
funny how that works.
Amir Carlisle was there because he works at Notre Dame now. And I'm just thinking, like, I remember when being at their practices and just, I mean, everybody was fast. It was Will Fuller. It was Chris Brown. It was Amir Carlisle. I mean, just everybody could run that was playing. I mean, Corey Robinson was your slow guy. You know what I mean? And he was a pretty darn good athlete.
Sure.
And this group has a little bit. I'm not saying that any of those guys are Will Fuller, but you see that kind of pace. And then, so what do? They come out and they're throwing downfield, like a ton. 1-on-1, 7-on-7 team, just
a ton,
throwing the ball downfield. Yeah,
it was fun to watch, frankly, because we know how good the corners are at Notre Dame, and there was some separation happening. You know what I mean? And that was. Now, there were also some really good plays made by the DBs. So this wasn't just an offensive circus, the greatest show on turf kind of stuff. But there was separation there, and quarterbacks were putting the ball where it needed to go. So that was fun too. And we'll get to that, because now I'm going to transition straight into quarterbacks, because, oh boy, like, the quarterback room, Brian, is just, I don't know a better word. It's just a sexy room, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but like, the ball coming out of hands, and that's where I'm going with it. Yeah. It is, there's talent in that room. And somebody asked a question in the press conference. You've got 4 guys, obviously, who are getting reps in spring. Now, that happens in spring because you want to see where guys are at and all of that. There wasn't much of a drop off from one guy to the next, to the next, to the next, and I would have to do a double take. Hey, mate, who threw that? To see where guys were and things like that. But man, it was fun watching these quarterbacks. Oh
yeah, I mean, a lot of things, Vince, you kind of expect to see on day one. I mean, you expect to see higher completion percentage in 1-on-1s. You expect to see a higher completion percentage in 7-on-7 on day one, because there's no pads.
Sure,
right? And history of receivers will tell you they're always going to be a little bit more willing to compete for the ball when there's no pads on, right? That's why I say about 7-on-7. Now, we'll see if this group carries that over when there's pads on, but it wasn't necessarily, the completion percentage was this and it was that or the other thing. It's more about, just like you said, Vince, aesthetically, it just looks really impressive.
Yes.
And all 4 of the guys, to some varying degree, really have a lot of arm talent. And, I actually thought the guy that I thought had the strongest arm, just velocity wise, was Kenny Minchie.
Yep, I was just going to say that.
But we'll start with Riley, go to Angeli, Minchie, and CJ Carr. But like with Riley, I thought his practice was a little bit up and down from an effectiveness standpoint. And you could see early on the ball placement wasn't there. He wasn't on the same page with the receivers. There were some misses. One rep he's throwing to Chris Mitchell, the next he's throwing to Jack Polian. And that's going to take. That's not a shot at Jack. Jack made a heck of a play on a throw from, I think, CJ Carr later. It's more about, that's a difference in speed, big difference in speed.
Right. And all 4 quarterbacks were throwing to everybody.
Right. Correct. But the reason that matters is not to take a shot at Jack Polian at all. I mean, if I was at Valpo, I'd be like, hey, man, why don't you go and transfer here for your last year? It's to say there's a big difference when you're throwing from one to the other, especially when you haven't thrown to these guys a lot. So Absolutely. You could see some of that today, where he was just a step off, or the receivers were a step off of what he would do. Like, there was a play where Jaden Thomas kind of started to slow down a little bit on an over route. Like, I don't think he thought he was going to get the ball. Then Riley throws it out there, and then Jaden accelerates back up, and he dives for it and just misses it.
Yeah.
Well, they about series or two later, they ran that same exact play, same exact route, and Jaden is humping it into the exact same zone. Riley gets it out there. Jaden hits it on the run. So they're learning each other. So Jaden doesn't think he's going to get the ball because he's not the primary read. So he doesn't necessarily give you the kind of effort you want. They don't make the completion, but to him, he's like, oh, this cat's going to throw me the ball even if I'm not the primary read. Next play, he goes out there, he humps it, and Riley doesn't say, well, he didn't do it last time, so I'm going to go somewhere else this time. Goes right back to him, complete pass. And then by the end of practice, you could see them more on the same page.
Absolutely.
But even like that throw that got fumbled back to him by the center, he picks up. It's like, dude, just throw it up. Give your guy a chance to go make a play.
And he did.
Now, you may tell him, hey, man, yeah, it worked out this time, but that's not really the throw we want if you can't get a grip on it, right? Against Ohio State or whatever. That's fine. But it's gonna tell his receiver something that, hey, you go out and run your route, and this guy's gonna get you the football.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I liked about Riley's practice today, Vince, was he was a lot more he was very willing to throw the ball on down the field routes. And I'm not talking about goes, and we won't get into too many specifics just because, I know Notre Dame doesn't like that, so I won't get into like specific concepts. But like, there's a lot of different type of down the field routes, like 15 plus down the field, or actually 20 plus down the field routes. And there's a lot more downfield routes than, and I know that Notre Dame didn't seem to know this in the past few years, but there's a lot more routes that you can run past 20 yards besides just goes and posts, right? There are other things you can do. They ran a lot of that today, and he was willing to take some shots into those zones. And so that also is going to establish with the receivers, like, hey, you're always humping it because you're always going to be a target. But the more practical part, Vince, was they didn't do a whole lot of that at Duke. That was the big unknown. They were and we talked about this in the breakdown leading into that game. They're very much a 5'11" to 6 foot tall, not fast, but quick, smart, good route runner guys. They are quick gaming it up all day.
Yeah.
They didn't have a Chris Mitchell. They didn't have a Deion Colsey. They didn't have a Jaden Greathouse. They didn't have those kind of guys. So we didn't know like what his feeling was going to be on, okay, is he an aggressive downfield guy or not? I don't know that I knew that answer. And we don't know that answer for sure today. But at least beyond today, like, because sometimes guys will do something in one practice and, you don't see it again. But at least for today, I was very happy to see Riley very willing on multiple throws to attack down the field. And not just when it was his primary read, but he would go to a secondary read on a downfield shot. And that was something I was very encouraged to see. And like, when you look at Steve Angeli, Steve was very good throwing the ball down the field in 1-on-1s and 7-on-7. But then when we get to team, it was quick, like locked in on the quick stuff. That's that maturation process that Steve is going to have to make, that Riley's been able to kind of work through with 19, 20 starts under his belt.
Sure.
Steve's got one.
Right.
So Steve's going to have to learn that when the bullets get flying a little bit, Steve, quick game. Now, Steve showed a lot of poise today. Like, the pass rush doesn't bother him, but you could just see in those team reps, Steve was just kind of locked in on the short routes. Get that ball out here. And that resulted in him not seeing some guys coming open on the second level. So that's going to be part of his maturation process. And the other thing for Steve, like, Riley gets the ball out really quick. Kenny and CJ get the ball out really quick. Steve has a longer delivery, so he's going to have to really make sure that he continues to soak in the offense. You could just tell he's not running the same offense he ran last year. He was a little late with some of those downfield reads and things. Now, when he threw it, I really liked Steve's ball placement today when he threw it. I thought that was pretty solid. There's two routes that he doesn't throw great, at least in today. And I won't say what they are, but they're both outside breaking routes. And it's not because of a lack of arm strength. It's just his ball placement struggles the further he has to throw it. And that's something you have to work on. But overall, a really quality day from those two veteran players.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree with you on Angeli. I think it I don't know if I want to say it's a confidence thing, but it's a learning the offense thing. I mean, he saw quick checkdowns and he took them. I mean, and that's basically the offense that he ran today. And you're right. He's going to process things slower than Riley Leonard. and that's to be expected. Riley Leonard's been doing this a lot longer. He's got a ton more starts under his belt. So nothing out of the ordinary there. I don't think I saw anything that made me go, oh, okay, that's surprising. I was impressed with Riley Leonard the first time seeing him in person in a practice situation. I thought he did great. All the things that you said are absolutely accurate, but I was also impressed with, some of the off the field stuff. I mean, he was leading, he was talking. I mean, he was being a quarterback. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did like that, at least in practice one, because that's not the easiest thing to do first day on the field, right?
He's got a very he's got a very different personality from Sam Hartman, and who had a very different personality from Jack Cohn.
Yeah.
And that can be one of the toughest things when you have 3 years in a row, really 3 out of 4 years, and who all had different personalities, and Tyler Buckner combined. You talk about new coaches, you get new quarterbacks every year too. I mean, Notre Dame will have from in 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, 5 straight years, they will have had a new starting quarterback on day one. And so there is some lack of continuity. So you've got to have a lot of conviction in who you are. And Sam had that. And that's why Sam was able to win over the locker room very quickly.
Yeah.
Because Sam came in as like, I'm just going to be myself. And I'm one of the guys, but I'm also not, but Riley's a little bit more talkative during practice than what Sam was.
Agreed.
And that was very noticeable today. Not a criticism, not better, not worse. It's just different. The thing I would say is, I thought Riley was solid today. I didn't think he was great. I think it was great to see him out there throwing and running. The thing that I like too, Vince, is I wanted to see the ball, how it comes out of his hand. And sometimes that can be a little hard on film to see it.
Sure.
Well, no, it's not hard on film. You can see it. But then when you see it in person, it's just a little bit different. I liked how the ball, for the most part, came out of his hand. There's a couple times you could tell he wasn't gripping it real well in a couple deep shots, but overall, the ball comes out. It gets to his receivers quickly. It doesn't explode out of his hand. Like he's not like a bazooka arm.
Sure.
It gets out quick. It gets up and down in a hurry. And his ball placement was pretty solid today. So, very pleased with the first day, because this is all I care about with Riley Leonard this spring. I do not care one bit about watching Riley Leonard run around. I got 19 games worth of film of Riley Leonard being a dude as a runner. I already know that.
Right.
It's like one of my favorite comedians is Brian Regan. And he talks about going to the doctor and he's like, for heartburn. And he says, so what does the doctor do? He comes in and he gives me the sheet of paper of all the things that can cause heartburn. He's like, I already know this. I know how to get it. I know how to get rid of it. And it's kind of like, I already know that with Riley Leonard. I already know that he can do that. What's going to determine whether he's a guy that can lead Notre Dame to 10, 11, 12 wins in a playoff spot, or a guy that can lead Notre Dame on a deeper run, is going to be his ability to develop as a passer. That's going to be the key.
Sure.
And today was a good first day. Good first
Absolutely.
day. Not great for me, but good first day.
It was a good first day. He wasn't as inaccurate as some people want to make him out to be. I will say that, and I will also say.
You're talking about reaction from today's practice?
No. I'm just talking about in general. Oh, Riley Leonard, he can't. Just basically saying, why bring him in, because he's so inaccurate. He's not going to be able to complete a pass.
Only looked at they looked at his overall completion percentage last year and didn't take into account he was like 40-something% in his last 2 games while playing on one leg.
Yeah.
The previous 17 starts of his career, 18 starts of his career, he was a 63+% completion percentage guy. So it is what it is.
So the only other thing I wanted to mention though was, there was all that talk about him having surgery and all these different things. There were times where he tucked it and ran with it, not in team, but in 7-on-7.
Yeah.
But didn't look like he was hobbling.
Watch him going through, change of direction.
Yeah.
He was going through. You were on the other side, Vince, but when they were going through the bag drills, he was fine.
Okay. Yeah.
He was changing. He was
I just wanted to put that to rest.
And, so obviously the as we already knew, the reports were a little premature about his availability for this. So now I do believe Notre Dame will be mindful of his reps as they go through practice.
Right.
But there's no need to be mindful today because they don't practice again for 13 more days.
Exactly.
But let's talk about the young guys, Vince.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I fall into the trap. I'll be honest with you. When I see a young guy and, you see their talent, you get all excited about it and, and all this, but these two guys are no different. I mean, the ball comes out of their hand a little bit different. Kenny Minchie, we talked about this. He's got like a kind of a 3/4, throwing motion, but
It's from
boy,
his ear.
but
He
boy, does that, it's like a
he has a
catcher.
throwing motion that would make Steve Spurrier proud,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Because
Good
he was
call.
a from the ear kind of guy.
But man, does he get the ball out of his hands fast. I mean, that ball just catapults out of his hands. As soon as he makes that decision, bam, that ball is coming out. And that's fun to watch. And then, of course, let's talk about Kenny.
Well,
Let's talk
the
about
thing
Kenny.
about Kenny is the concern I have with quarterbacks who have that really short, quick, compact release is that sometimes they're sacrificing velocity for quickness. That's not the case with Kenny. As I said, it could just be perception because of how quickly he gets it out. But eye test wise, I thought the ball got from his hand to receivers faster than it did for any other quarterback, in my opinion. Like that ball really explodes out of his hand.
Yeah.
We didn't get a chance to see him really let it loose deep a ton. They did during when they were doing, routes on air, some 2s-on-2s. You could see him. He was throwing corner routes, and the ball really gets out of his hand well. During 1-on-1s and 7-on-7, he didn't get a lot of chance to throw the ball deep, but the ball comes out really well for Kenny. I mean, he's got a ton of arm talent. He really does. I mean, it's funny, but as far as just pure arm talent, the two best quarterbacks they have are the two young kids.
Sure. From a straight
just
physicality, physical attributes.
Just arm speed, ability to put the ball wherever they want it, the velocity with Kenny. I mean, just take all the other stuff out of the equation. Like when that kid throws the football, you're just like, that's a thing of beauty. I would not teach another quarterback to throw like him because I don't know that others could do it.
Right.
Because his arm speed is so impressive. Other guys don't have that kind of arm speed, so they wouldn't be able to replicate his delivery. But the thing about it is his delivery is very much it's one that it's not repeatable from the standpoint of it's not a delivery where he just same arm angle every time. And CJ is more of a same arm angle every time. Kenny will move it around, but no matter where he moves it, the ball comes out of his hand the same way. This part is the same no matter he's throwing from here, wherever, it comes out the same. And so you don't see, because the difficulty when with some quarterbacks to try to change arm angles, but the ball doesn't come out the same, it can create different spin and it can come out with different angles. And that can make it difficult for receivers to catch the ball. The best quarterbacks that can change their arm slot are guys who can do it while creating a very consistent release. And it comes out similarly. And that's the thing I noticed about Kenny today is no matter where he releases the ball from, it comes out crisp and on a correct plane and gets to the receivers in a hurry. It really does.
And accurately. I mean, he is extremely accurate with his arm angle and the way he throws the ball and all of those different things that you mentioned. And I think that's the fun part about watching Kenny throw the ball. I mean, it's just no matter what angle it comes out of, it gets to where it needs to be. And he's got a lot of arm talent, man. Like you said, when we were talking about the two other guys, he's got the strongest arm of the four. I mean,
it appears to be.
At least now, what we can tell.
The only reason I say it appears to be because sometimes guys who have that really quick, compact release, the ball can appear faster than it actually is.
Yeah.
Meaning like we could get on the jugs machine and maybe Steve's throwing with more velocity or something like. But I'm just telling you, like it gets out of his hand and into the receivers a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say it appears. I'm just leaving that caveat, Vince, because I do know that that's something that can be true with quarterbacks. It does appear, however, that the ball just gets on guys a lot quicker when it comes out of his hand. And like Riley's got a really quick delivery too. But even then, it doesn't quite pop.
Yeah.
Even with him the way it does with Kenny. And Riley's got really good arm talent. Don't get me wrong, but Kenny can spin that sucker, boy. It is fun to watch that kid throw the football. It really is. It really is. And we haven't even started talking about the other one of that.
Yeah, well, we can. It
was funny. I'll just share this real quick. We were talking to Kyle Kelly afterwards, and he was like, we were just kind of joking, like, okay, you guys at On 3, you guys do the CJ Carr hype train. We'll do the Kenny Mini hype train. I'll get the guys over at Rivals to do, this guy. We'll get somebody else to do. Because the thing about it is, Vince, they are all really good I mean, they're all talented quarterbacks. And you said it to me. He's like, dude, if Steve Angeli went to, and we named a couple schools, and if he can lead those schools to a lot of wins.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's not a kid on this roster that you say, hey, if this guy starts for you, you may not be able to beat Stanford.
Yes.
You know, like,
right.
Notre Dame won 10 games or 9 games a couple years ago with a quarterback that does have an equal close to the arm talent that all 4 of these kids have. So when we praise Kenny and what we're about to say about CJ, just keep in mind, like, that this whole room has a lot of arm talent on it.
Oh, yeah. And that's what we were talking about at the top about, the talent that's in this room, top to bottom, is just, it's just nice. It's refreshing. But let's talk about the freshman who has already been on campus since the middle of December and had a chance to go through, the bowl practices. And now this is technically his first spring. Didn't look like a early enrollee freshman to me, but they need to get him a smaller jersey.
Throwing it wise, Vince.
They need to get him a smaller jersey. Yes. This thing was flopping all over the place. Jeez.
I will say this. When it just comes to throwing the football, CJ is incredibly gifted.
Oh.
But I do want to start. There were times you could tell freshmen learning the offense. Like, the ball didn't come out
on time
as quickly as he needed to. He didn't get to the proper – like, there was one time he threw one route, which was fine. But if you give him a semester in this offense, I know he's going to hit that route next time. That kind of thing.
Sure.
There's one time he pulled and threw an RPO throw that you could see Coach Denbrock kind of getting on him like, that's not – they didn't give us what we should have seen that's what it looked like he was doing to me. So there were some of those things from CJ that to me made him look like, yep, freshman, right? But where I think you're going with this is the arm talent is special.
Just doesn't make me think that this kid should still be in high school. That, I mean, that I'll just say that his motion. So I'm gonna, as a Cubs fan, okay.
I'm sorry,
Mark Pryor as a pitcher had a very repeatable motion, okay, and it was a thing of beauty. It was just his motion and his rotation and all of that, right? Very similar to me for CJ Carr. His is the motion that you would take a video of and be like,
clinic tape.
This is what I want you to. This is how I want you to throw. Okay, and it's very repeatable, and he does a great job of repeating the motion over and over again. Okay, that's the best comparison I can make in my own tiny little brain.
Yeah, he's Mark Pryor, whereas Kenny Minchie's Pedro Martinez.
Yeah,
where Pedro would like change the arm slot and it just come out. It just yes.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
no, that's 100%. Clinic tape. That's
okay.
This is what I'm doing if I'm going to put together, because I can remember when I worked with Dylan a couple years ago, when Dylan at the time was still deciding what to play and he wanted to do some quarterback stuff.
Yeah,
it's like I was like, man, I'd love to have a film tape that I could just give to some kids of the drills I got. And I'm like, if I was ever going to do that, that's the kid I'd want as my quarterback in those drills.
Yep.
Is everything is it's compact, it's concise, and he said it's repeatable. And Kenny and Steve, CJ can eventually going to get to his name. CJ, Kenny, Riley, CJ, he can change arm angles, but he only does it when necessary. Where Kenny just kind of naturally does it, and he throws a really good deep ball. One of the knocks on him was his deep ball skills. And my biggest beef with that from people who would say that is you're arguing from you're assuming you're assuming that because his high school runs this, that's all he can do. And I have a friend of mine who we were debating about a guy, and he goes, I don't know if he can do this. I'm like, well, what makes you think that? Because all he does in high school is rush the passer. I said, so you're assuming that because that's all he does, that's all he can do, and that's a faulty evaluation technique, right? You've got to be able to evaluate different aspects of it. And CJ is going to quickly put that stuff to rest. You could just see that today because when he throws the ball downfield, it's just like, I mean, he throws corner routes like most people throw 5-yard out cuts. It's just putting it on a dime. His timing in those type of drills, his timing is exceptional. Where he's going to have to improve timing-wise is when you get into the live fire moments where, you've got to read a defense and do some of those things. But he had some really good balls. Was he the one that threw the corner route during one-on-ones that was just like, wow, that was gorgeous. That was a thing of beauty.
He had a few gorgeous throws,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. The one that
Yeah.
he dropped into Mike Gilbert on that go route, I think it was during 7-on-7. Was it 7-on-7 or was it 1-on-1? Either way, it was just it couldn't have gone anywhere else except in the breadbasket where it ended up. And, that was just a pretty ball. And that's what he has the ability to do. And it's pretty coming out. It's pretty going in,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's a very, as wide receivers would say, it's a very catchable football as well.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
like
always nice too.
Troy McIntosh asked in the chat, basically, can this type of thing, can this confidence in the quarterbacks, the fact that they can all throw it that way, does it instill confidence in the receivers? And the answer is absolutely.
Right.
And we talked about all the receivers. We didn't mention the great route and big play that Cam Williams had up the seam. We didn't talk about how good of a day that Micah Gilbert had and all that, because there's just so many guys that looked impressive. But a big part of it is there'd be times in the past, Vince, where you'd kind of feel bad for certain receivers because they had to go with insert quarterback name, and that guy just wouldn't give him the ball the way that the starter was. It's like now, it's like, dude, I don't care what team you're on, first, second, third, or fourth. You got somebody can spin it, getting you to rock.
Absolutely.
And it's one of those things where as a receiver, you're like, dude, I don't care who the quarterback is. I'm going to go do what I need to do because those guys can give me the football.
That excuse does not live there anymore. Like that's not an excuse that the receivers can make at this. Not that they were, but like that doesn't exist because the quarterback that's going to be throwing you the football will get it into your neighborhood and you better make a play.
Right.
So
it was good to see that. I mean, so the quarterback talent is it's very good.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's very good.
Now, I don't want to gloss over tight ends, but it was a very small group today. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, no Mitchell Evans, no Kevin Bauman. Eli Raridan went through some drills, but then we didn't see him at all during one-on-ones and team and 7-on-7. So not sure what the deal is there. I'll say this: Cooper Flanagan had a really good corner route early. That was the one that I wanted to see, Vince. I know you sent me a note on it. Let me pull this. It might have been. It was either. Let me see who it was that threw that route. Give me a sec. But there was it was early in one-on-ones. What is that?
It was Riley Leonard. He was going against.
It was Riley
Schuler.
Leonard against Adon Schuler. He ran a beautiful corner route.
Yep.
And Adon knew he was beat and tried to grab him.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Cooper was so strong that he just ran through the hole.
Yeah, right.
And Riley threw a perfect ball, and it was a big play. So,
yeah,
it was. He's got some tools, and I tell you what, Jack Larson, like you said it to me. He clearly doesn't always know what he's doing because he's a first-year practice guy.
Sure.
But he has a really good feel for running routes. Like he looked a lot better in one-on-ones than he did during team because in one-on-ones, you know what the route is.
Yeah.
I don't got to worry about, and he's got some really good sharpness. I was concerned that he's added like 20 some pounds since he got to Notre Dame. Like, is that going to slow him down? Didn't. He actually moved pretty well today in his hands. I mean, we saw it in high school, but can he do it in Notre Dame? His hands, if the ball hits his hands, it's going to get caught.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just sorry, defense. That's just what's going to happen. So it was good to see Jack get a chance to go out there, and he looked a little bigger than I thought. Remember, because Vince, you and I saw him at Irish Invasion a couple of years ago.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And he was small. I mean, he was about 6'2.5", maybe 6'3", and 205 pounds. And even then, you could see the hands were there. They were great hands. He looked a lot bigger today than he has in the past. So that was good to see. So I was happy to see Jack had a solid performance. But honestly, to be straight with y'all, we didn't spend a ton of time on the tight ends because they were doing a lot of blocking today. And same with the offensive line. We will talk about the offensive line a little bit, but we didn't watch a ton of the line play because you're not going to get there's nothing you should hang your hat on about. I think this about this unit when they don't have pads on. But there are still some things we saw that we liked. And offensive line wise, the one thing we did notice today, and I don't want to talk too much about it or put too much on it because, again, no pads. but I don't know that I've ever seen this many gaping holes open up in a non-padded practice. That was surprising to see. Now, part of it was the running backs because they would get through the holes so fast that the hole didn't have time to close up. And that's part of it. And we'll talk about the running backs last. But I thought the offensive line, they're pretty big. They're big guys.
Yeah, and athletic.
Yeah, and I thought the two that really stood out to me today, Charles Jagasaw was really physical, and Billy Schrauth looked really good to me today. Ashton Craig was good. He had a couple muff snaps, but he overall looked pretty good. Tosh Baker had a solid day outside of two really bad reps, which we'll get into when we talk about the defense, because I want to save that for the defensive time.
Fair enough.
But I was really encouraged by, I'll just say this. I've said in the past, Vince, that Mike Denbrock is a big inside zone guy. So I'm not giving away any trade secrets. Anyone that's ever watched a game of film of Mike Denbrock knows he loves running inside zone.
Correct.
Saw a lot of inside zone today.
Watch LSU.
And the one thing that you and I talked about, and Ryan and I talked about, was I really feel like this offensive line is going to thrive under that because it fits their style. And today was exhibit A of that. They just want to come off and I've been very critical about Joe Rudolph of they hit and they stop. Today, I thought the line did a really good job. Again, no pads. Let's see what happens when they put pads on.
Right.
Did a really nice job of hitting and driving through contact today.
Right.
Much better than we saw last season. So that was a very encouraging sign. More than any individual player, that's probably the thing that I was most impressed by. And then the final note is Anthony Knapp is so small. When he got out there next to Ty Chan, I was like, who is that?
Yes.
He is so small, but he is athletic. Like, he's the quickest kid they have. Now, he should be. He's only 275
I was going to say, he's also the smallest. Yeah.
But he looks so small because they put him at tackle. And so right tackle. And so he's kind of out in space, and you're like, the tight end's bigger than this kid. I think he had Cooper Flanagan next to him. Like, I think the tight end's bigger than he is. It was wild, but he is an impressive athlete, and he's just very small. I thought Ty Chan showed me some things today, working with the second team at guard. That was nice to see. They need the Selvin Absher tackle experiment needs to end because he is so physical. And when they just let him drive block is when he looks at his best. When he's in space, he just doesn't look as comfortable. But man, he can really drive block. He can come off and play with some ferocity. I just have this vision of him and Charles Jagasaw playing side by side, like at guard and set tackle, and just start thinking about the holes that are going to open up behind those two guys. But I like the physicality.
There were some holes opened up today.
And the D-line had their fair share of plays too.
For sure.
Right? But when they did it right, boy. But here's the thing, though, Vince. If you go back and watch the film, the holes weren't like 2017 holes where they're just blowing open wide holes that anybody could run through. They would open up for a second and then close. It's kind of, which showed me, number one, really good cohesiveness. But the reason it hit is because when these running backs get downhill, they're missiles.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it is nuts how explosive downhill they are. It's like there was one time, so we were on the far right up top, and they were running towards us, but on the far opposite side of the field. So we're watching, and all of a sudden I see this wall of humanity, and I can't see the backs. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I see this like Ferrari driving 100 miles an hour come flying out of this little hole. It's Jadarian Price. I'm like, where the heck? And just boom. I mean, you're just like, good Lord. And it didn't matter who it was. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Keedron Young, didn't matter. Like that's an impressive room athletically. And the one thing I did notice, they catch the ball really well. Jeremiah Love is going to be a pass game threat for Notre Dame this year. You could just tell it on day one. The way they used him, the way he catches the ball, and then once he gets in space, it's kind of like he's got that style of play where when he catches the ball in space, you can just kind of hear everybody just hold their breath for a second. Like, uh-oh, what's about to happen? And then as soon as he makes a move, everybody goes nuts. And
there was a play along the sideline. It was just a
bubble.
I didn't even think.
Or actually, it was not even a bubble. It was just like a little now screen.
It almost felt like a check down because I don't think it was right away. But he made a couple of moves on some guys.
Oh, then we're thinking of a different play then. So, yeah, it happened more than once.
So there you go. He made a couple of moves on some guys down the left sideline, and he wouldn't have broke it for a touchdown, but he got himself 6 or 7 extra yards by putting some moves on some guys.
Where
And
it could have been shorter. Like the play I
100%.
saw, it was like just like a little quick perimeter screen. And there wasn't much of a hole, but he just plants, makes a guy miss, and then shoo, right through it for like a 9-yard gain.
Yeah.
So like a lesser athlete's a -2 there.
100%.
That's the difference, right?
Right.
Jadarian, really explosive downhill. The Achilles effects that we saw a little bit last year with the change of direction, gone. That was like his suddenness is back.
Yeah.
The Jadarian Price we saw 2 years ago in spring before he was out, that was back. That was back. So that was good to see from him. And here's the Kedron Young. It's got like his thighs are like this. I mean, he's a truck. But the thing about him is he's really nimble for such a big back. He's a very really good feet. And I don't know what his high school, with all due respect to the coaches of Lufkin, why were you not throwing this kid the football more? He's a really good route runner and has great hand. He uses his hands as well as the wide receivers do when the ball's coming. I mean, he's just doing little check downs and he's snatching the ball out of there. Great hands coming in the backfield. So that was a pleasant surprise. Very pleasant surprise for me, Vince, to see how effective he was catching the football. And of course, we know Jeremiah can catch the ball. We know Jadarian can catch the ball. We know Jabron Payne can catch the ball. But that was good to see. And then, we saw second drill of one-on-ones. It's Jeremiah Love against Jack Kaiser, and Jack knows what's coming. It's a wheel route. It's not even a wheel. It's just a straight sideline route out of the backfield, and there's just nothing Jack Kaiser could do about it. He just blew past. And Jack Kaiser can run.
That's the one thing. That's not a knock on Jack Kaiser. That is a compliment the other direction.
Yeah. And I think it was Minchie just lost it over the top, and big play.
Right.
So I was really happy to see how much they used the bat. And I'm trying to be careful of being specific with the type of routes and stuff.
Don't want to get in trouble.
Yep.
Don't want to get in trouble. Yep. So that's the offense, if I'm not mistaken. We have covered them all, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
yeah.
Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share with your family and friends, leave us a 5-star review, all that fun stuff. We would really appreciate that. Stay tuned, though, because here we go. We're going to talk some defense here, Brian Driscoll. And again, no pads. So that is the caveat to this entire conversation. And so when we're talking about, the defensive line, and even more so, because we talked about this when we were walking back to the car, even more so at linebacker, without pads on, it's very difficult to kind of evaluate the linebacker play.
We always say, Vince, that defense usually has the advantage earlier in the season, spring, early fall camp. That's not true when the pads are off.
Right.
When there's no pads, that's a pro offense day. So it was good that the offense had the better day. If they didn't, that'd be a little problem. Now, the next time we see them and there's pads on, then I expect some things to kind of change a little bit, right?
Because we get one more full open practice, and that'll be.
But we'll see some some 5
scrimmage
periods where they'll maybe do some inside run and things like that.
Right.
But so where do you want to start? You want to start with the linebackers, Vince, since that's the one?
Yeah, since
we had a little bit of a scare during practice.
My gosh. You want to talk about hearts hitting the floor?
I really think I'm going to have to reach out, but I really think he bumped knees.
Okay.
And then just hopped and then went down.
Okay.
Because it looked so. Just Drake Bowen is coming through the hole.
Got to tip.
And all of a sudden,
tip
behind
the ball.
The play, he hits the ground and then goes down and he starts pounding on the ground. And first thing we're thinking is ACL.
100%.
Like ACL.
Because it looks like him. Yeah, it looked like
his
leg kind of got caught in the turf.
Yeah.
And then he just goes down. It's like, oh.
So he did get up. He walked off he didn't even really limp, but just walked off the field. And then 5 minutes later, he was standing by Max Bulla, getting ready to put his helmet on to come back in, and then they ended practice.
Because he went into the trainer's room.
Yeah.
And they were, with Mr. Hunt. one of the head trainers there,
Yeah.
and I was definitely nervous. You and I both looked at each other like, you got to be kidding me. Day one, like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think all
Yeah.
is fine.
But he looked good afterwards. I thought athletically he looked good. Side to side's really good. His downhill
Yeah.
explosiveness is really impressive. Really looks good. Like, I think his weight's down to 234, which is not surprising for baseball. Just really clean movement skills. They
Yeah.
had him as the number one mic, obviously, today. He had just really looks good going through drills. I thought Vince. I just thought his side to side in drills, his change of direction in drills was really impressive. I know you got a chance to see him working through drills. What did you think of just kind of how well he moves? I was impressed by how big he is, by how well he moved. I was happy to see.
No, he's just athletic. I mean, and I know that's a very broad statement, but his feet move so quickly. He looks like a baseball player doing ground ball drills, if that's the best way to
Yes,
put it. You know what I mean? Like, his side to side is
can
excellent,
bend and yep.
and his bend is excellent. I mean, he has no problem because he plays third base, right? So he's gonna be good at doing things like that. I mean, it translates well to me to play middle linebacker, and so his side to side is excellent. I think the biggest thing for him in spring is just going to be recognition
Yeah,
of the defense, recognition of the opposing offense,
communication and recognition.
all
Yeah.
that stuff. It's going to be all mental, really, because the physical side, I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about him moving. I'm not worried about him coming downhill. I'm not worried about any of that stuff.
Anyone that watches him go through drills is not going to ever think he's stiff or
No.
slow, or it's about learning. It's about learning it.
Yes.
Right. That's going to be the key.
100%.
Speaking of learning it, that's also been Jalen Snead's big thing, right? And I thought today, I liked he had a lot of pop plays today.
He didn't stand
like
out in a negative way to me today. Yeah.
in certain ways today. Didn't notice any big assignment mistakes. Doesn't mean he didn't have any. I don't know that we necessarily know that any of those guys did because of the way they practiced. It was kind of hard to tell. But he was his. Remember when we talked about the linebacker blitzes in 2022, and we were like, "Please God, stop blitzing your linebackers because they don't know how to do it.
Right.
They don't time it right. They don't know how to avoid blocks."
Ugly.
And then that same group in 2023 had more confidence in it, better technique, better timing, and they were just.
Yeah.
That's how Jalen Snead looked, at least for today.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, he would blitz, and it's like he didn't know what hole to go through, couldn't spot the quarterback. He'd get to the backfield and then just completely get juked. But today, though, he just looked like he was exploding through the line and just really just with intentionality. Had a couple plays where he was going to come, red pass, dropped. Like, when I mean red pass, I mean he saw the quarterback was getting ready to throw it, stops, takes 2 steps back and jumps. And I think he batted one and almost got another, which is smart. That's a reactionary movement that we didn't see from Jalen in the past. Because normally if he was blitzing, he just would kind of blitz. And if the quarterback threw it, he'd just throw it over his head. I mean, that's just – but to see him stop, jump back, and try to make a play on the ball, you're like, okay, he's starting to figure some things out, right? And that was a good sign to see. Jaden Alsbury is like, did you see Marcus Freeman's face when I asked him about the linebackers and he starts going through the guys and then he mentions Jaden Alsbury? Did you see his face?
He started like a smile, like a smirk, like a smirky smile.
Jaden Alsbury,
right.
So man after my own heart, Jaden Alsbury fan club. His body looks different this spring, more muscular.
He looks more like a linebacker, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Less like a safety.
Yeah. He looked thick. Moved around really well, physical to the point of attack. He was around the ball a lot because he was playing rover, but a lot of times when they would motion, and they motion a lot, he would then tuck inside because this is what they do. Right. They don't have the rover switch. They just bump out the will. And so he would tuck inside and then come downhill, and you're just like, dude, that's a guy's an inside linebacker.
Right.
Like he's really impressed. Well, Preston Zinner moved. He's still a work in progress as far as picking things up. But I thought he looked a lot more comfortable than he did a year ago in the spring. Remember, he just looked completely lost a year ago.
I mean, you would see he would flash athletically.
Yeah.
But from a defensive standpoint, he looked lost. Agreed.
He looked more comfortable today. Still not quite there yet, but looked more comfortable this year. So, I mean, just all those guys can move. And then I thought Kingston looked like he
didn't look out of place.
It did not look like it was his first college football practice. I'll say that. Like he's a work in progress, like all young guys, but you could just see the way he was communicating, the way he was coming downhill, the way that he would, when he was being triggered, the way he would just kind of come down with intentionality. and purpose. Like all these kids move well. Like
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing we said going in, and we, at least for one day without pads, we got some confirmation of there's just a lot of athleticism on this football team.
Yeah.
Like, name me a linebacker, Vince, that can't run. I mean, I'm even Trey Reader can run. You know what I mean? Like, and he's a walk-on. Like, that kid
Right.
can move. So you saw a lot of that today, but that's all I really care about in day one. But I'll say this: all of the good things I said didn't start out that way, because the first thing that they did after individual is one-on-ones against the running backs. And as I said on the board, I would much rather be in the room with the running backs going over that film than being in the linebacker room going over that film. But it just was like, you just kind of have to remind yourself, every linebacking core they would go against is going to have a similar problem.
Sure.
You know, and they just started getting, you could tell it was in their heads a little, because they started getting a little grabby after the first 3-4 rounds. They just started grabbing dudes. Like,
Oh, yeah, because like, we can't keep getting beat by
I
this
can't run
guy.
with this guy. I
Yeah,
can't run with
right.
these guys. And it didn't matter.
Right.
It's like, it was all of them.
Yeah.
That's going to be a work in progress, because
Mhm.
teams are going to do that. And that's something that younger guys are going to struggle with. But like, even Jack Kaiser got beat twice in that situation. And you're just like, what do you want him to do?
Right.
Anybody else got a linebacker that can run with Jeremiah Love? I don't think so.
Nope.
So that was a work in progress for sure. But the movement is good. I think that they're a bigger group. I mean, even just thicker, than they were a year ago, obviously. But overall, solid day for the linebackers.
Yeah,
in
from
my
what you can
opinion.
glean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Defensive line's also kind of a difficult position group to talk about when you don't have
With no
pads on.
pads.
You
Just a couple
know,
guys have popped though. For
Jordan
me.
Botelho made a nice play on the outside.
Jordan Botelho made a few nice plays.
Yeah,
So I
he
called
did.
Ryan afterwards, and I was like, I'm a little pissed at Jordan Botelho today. I said, because he's getting me fired up, and I hate it when he does that.
Right? Just to let you down.
He had, I mean, everybody can talk about, like, Tosh this, Tosh that, and Tosh has got to do a better job there. But like, I don't really care who was at right tackle on that play. He came off the line so fast. But the thing is, what he would do in the past is he would come off fast and then kind of stay on that vertical path and then overrun the quarterback. But today he came off and then bent. He had that bend.
Yeah,
where he
right.
Once he got to the tackle, he leaned underneath him to get around to where he could actually get to the quarterback.
Right, made a move.
And you're like, okay, that was nice to see. Like, that's the Jordan Botelho we think we're going to get that we just didn't get last year.
Correct.
Like, that's the guy we got against South Carolina. And we're like, hey, that's the guy we got against Syracuse in 2022 that we never saw last year. And so that was good to see. Like, and it wasn't, like you said, there's not a lot you can learn from a defensive lineman, no pads on.
Right.
Same with linebackers. But what you can see is how they move. And I thought Jordan looked a step slow last year. I thought he was a little bit more plodding. He didn't have that same explosiveness that we've seen from him in the past. When I saw that he'd put 6 pounds back on and got back up to 263, I was like, I'd much rather see him play at like 250 or 255, right? But man, Vince, his burst off the line today was really impressive. Like, just that he was playing at a different gear than the other edge players. So that one practice doesn't mean a whole lot, but I'd rather him do it in one practice than not do it in one practice, obviously. So that was really good to see. But he made Tosh look, I mean, Tosh didn't even get a hand on him.
He just,
he didn't even get a hand on him.
He was in the backfield before the quarterback even knew that the play had started.
Which tells you how quickly he got off the line. I mean, it just was. And I actually thought CJ did a good job of avoiding him. I don't know that he would have been able to avoid him if they were allowed to hit the quarterback.
Yeah.
But any chance CJ had, I thought the play he made would have maybe given him a chance. But Jordan played pretty well. I thought Donovan Heinisch had a really good day today. Jason Onye had a pretty solid day today. But the freshman that stood out the most to me was Cole Mullins. I thought Cole, he was 42, Vince. That's because everybody kept saying, who's 42? Who's 42? And I just wanted to be like, Cole Mullins. It's my dude.
Memorize your roster.
Well, not just that, but like,
I know. I'm just kidding.
I've been very high on Cole Mullins for a while.
Yeah.
Athletically, he looked good. So it's good to see him. Just period, it's good to see him out there after breaking his leg last year. So that was good to see him out there. But he's got really heavy hands. There was a play. It was against Emil Wagner, and it was during the run period. And he comes off, and Emil goes out to base block him. Cole is the force player. Force means you are trying to force the right. You have one of two jobs as a run defender when it comes to the edge. You're either a force player or spill player. A force player has to come off in a way that forces the run to go back inside because that's where all his help is. A spill player is one where your angle of attack is trying to spill it outside where you have rovers, safeties, corners coming down to play it, right? Because it's different responsibilities depending on the call. He was a force player on this play. And he takes his inside arm and he hits Emil Wagner right in the chest and with one hand rocks his back. You're like, okay, that's a freshman. And then remember that pressure he had later, his run to pass conversion? Like, dude, that is natural looking. What that is so when you come off the line, you don't just speed rush on 1st and 10 on a run look. You come off and you're playing your run responsibility.
Right.
Then when you see the quarterback drop, you convert to your pass rush. Was it against Southern Absher or was it against Jagasol? I can't remember who the tackle was, but he comes off, he hits the tackle and he's playing contain. And as soon as he see the quarterback come, because it was a play fake, it was like a straight under center play, or it was pistol. They were actually in pistol. And he goes and he does the pistol fake. And as soon as he sees the quarterback drop back out of the pistol, he realized the quarterback had the ball. This was a team period where they could run. And he then converts immediately to an outside pass rush, just discards the tackle like it was nothing, and gets to the quarterback for what probably would have been a sack. You're like, that's a freshman.
Right.
Who did not play his entire senior year of football. And the last time he played his middle linebacker as he did defensive end as a junior. To see that kind of natural feel for setting the edge and then converting, like run to pass, you're like, dude, that kid's got some natural feel for the game. So I was very happy to see that from Cole Mullins today. That was good to see. Very good to see.
Nice. So that's the defensive line. And again, not a ton of information just because of the way practice is set up. First practice of the spring, no pads, things like that. So, kind of hold your opinions on the line and the linebackers until we get to see them kind of hit each other a little bit more.
Hold your opinion on everyone.
Well, fair
after
enough.
Just
that's also very fair. Very fair. Okay, so let's talk secondary because we did get to see a lot of the secondary because that's where kids can shine in one-on-ones and it doesn't really matter that you're wearing pads for the most part, and then 7-on-7, we saw a lot of 7-on-7. And then of course in team, they didn't really run the ball a whole lot because there were no pads. They threw the ball more often than they ran the ball. So got to see a lot of the secondary. So let's start with the corners, Brian. As we said, going into the spring, they were going to be special at corner.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I still feel that way after one practice.
Yeah, I'm going to have a take here that explains why I make the big bucks. Benjamin Morrison's really freaking good.
That's fair.
That's called sarcasm, everyone.
Yeah.
Because it does not take anyone that knows much about football to watch that kid play and be like, he's really good.
Yeah.
Did you see the interception that he had? That because like Riley Leonard tried to beat him with a throw that he beat him with against
almost identical, by the way.
It was almost the exact same
left
throw.
Sideline.
Yes.
Everything was the same.
And he completely went up and one-handed it and picked it off. And you're just
one hand.
Okay. Because the thing I noticed from Benjamin today, he doesn't look a lot like a bigger, like he put on a lot of weight, but he looked stronger. Do you know what I mean, Vince?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
he looked a little thicker upper body, but he just looked a little bit more muscular.
Right.
Like a little bit more like, okay, he's a junior now. He's 2021 now.
He looks more like a
man.
He just,
that play strength. And Ryan and I talked about this yesterday, and I talked about in the past, like if all he does this year is just get stronger and everything else about his game is exactly what it was last year, he's going to be a way better player if he just gets stronger. And you saw a little bit of that today because the guy he was going against on that route was Jaden Thomas, I believe.
Yes, it was 100%.
Who is your strongest receiver, who outplayed Benjamin later for a big play. I believe that was against Benjamin, right?
Yes, it was.
The second one?
100% it was. Okay. So I want to echo what you're saying. and we're talking about the play that he got the interception. Here's the other thing, because you're talking about him being bigger and stronger. He actually rode Thomas out of bounds. Okay, so
On the
Jaden
ball
Thomas
he caught?
On the ball that was intercepted.
Yeah.
He rode Thomas out of bounds. So honestly, if Thomas would have caught the ball, which he wasn't going to catch, if he would have caught the ball, it wouldn't have counted because the ref already had his hat off. He had not established coming back in bounds yet. So he actually used his strength to ride Jaden Thomas, who's a big, strong kid, by the way, rode him out of bounds, kept his left arm on him, watched the ball go up, and then went and got it with his right arm, one-handed interception. I mean, everything about the coverage was amazing, and then he just went up and made an elite play on the football. So it was elite all the way around. Even if he hadn't intercepted it, it was elite because he took Jaden Thomas out of the play completely. So it was very impressive.
The other thing too, Vince, is just watching the movement stuff. He doesn't look. It's still smooth, fluid. He looked maybe a step faster again, but that's without pads, so maybe that's why he looked a step faster. But I thought overall he just looked really good. Yeah. He looked like you want to start a young starter look. Okay, he's now older and stronger and still hungry, still competes. And that's the big thing. Practice one for a kid who's a All-American and all, potential first-round pick. There was no going through the motions today. He was out there to compete.
Absolutely.
And you love to see that. You love to see that. But no, and when you beat him, it's exactly what it was today. If you're going to beat him, it better be a heck of a route, heck of a catch, and heck of a throw.
Right.
Because otherwise you're not going to beat him. And so it was good to see that kind of physicality from him. I thought Jaden Mickey, I felt kind of bad for him. It just was a rough day for him because guarding Chris Mitchell in the way that they played today is just not really to his strength. He's just not an open and run with fast guys kind of corner. He had a couple reps when Jaden's best plays today were coming down against the run and breaking up quick game, and that's when he thrived. But he got beat, I think 3 times by Chris Mitchell on vertical routes. And that was a little bit of a tough day for him in that regard.
Yeah, but, and the where he went over the top of them and all that. I mean, just high pointed. I mean, it was more of a really good play by Mitchell than a bad play by Mickey. But
that one was the one where he just ran right by him.
Yeah,
I mean, Mickey was there. Just Mitchell timed the jump and was able to kind of get his elbows above Jaden.
Yeah, and
once you do that, he's going to be jumping up into your arms, and you got the advantage. So it was. The timing of the jump, that's why timing of jumps is so important. You know how low man wins in line play, high man wins in receiving. And it's not so much who can jump the highest, but who can get up the highest first and make that other guy work through you.
And time it out that you're also getting at the top end of your jump when the ball arrives. That's also very important with the timing situation, right? So, I mean, how many times, gosh, Brian, how many times have we talked about, just wide receivers competing for the football? Just compete. Compete for the
how
football.
They don't.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we want.
Past?
That's what we've wanted so badly. And I saw it numerous times today. Numerous times. Again, one practice, but man, I just love the compete of the wide receivers. And unfortunately, Jaden Mickey was on the receiving end of some of that. Bad way. But it's just what you're right. It didn't play.
I mean, like Chris Mitchell got on top of Christian Gray a couple times. Now, not by as much, but he did. But the difference between Jaden and Christian is Christian has recovery speed, and Jaden just doesn't. Christian is really fast. And he had the second best cover play of the day, in my opinion. So they were running a deep over route, and Jaden Harrison, who's really fast, looked like he was beating Christian.
He's wide open, to be honest with you.
Looked like that.
That's what I'm saying. Looked like that.
That's what Christian wanted the quarterback to think.
That's what I thought.
Who was the quarterback on that one?
I can't remember who that was. To be honest with you.
Let me check my notes real quick. Let me
see if I got it.
That's not my notepad from today. That's my notepad from my work. Let me see here. Give me a sec. Let me grab my notepad from today because I want to see who was on that route. It was Riley Leonard threw it.
Okay.
And so if you're Riley, you totally understand it. Jaden has beat him across. Jaden Harrison is underneath Christian Gray. And so Riley throws it on a line out towards the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
Everything offensively looking like it's good. The problem is Christian wasn't running full speed yet. He was baiting the quarterback into that throw. And as soon as the throw was made, Christian accelerates and almost picks it off.
Yep.
If the ball wasn't thrown out in front of Jaden, like it was a good ball by Riley. And if he was off by 4 inches, that's a pick.
Right.
And you're just like, dude, that's really good cornerback play right there. That's
yes, it was.
That's really good
because it happened literally right in front of us.
Right in front of us.
Because we're up in the balcony and we're kind of looking down, right? And we're watching this play, and the ball looks like it would be coming right at me.
And
if I wasn't
we're saying hit the over. We're saying to ourselves like hit the over. He throws the over, and then we're like, oh. Yeah, so like when I say like he baited us too. I've been doing this a long time. He baited me. I'm like, throw the over.
Right.
And he threw the over. Christian said, I wanted you to throw the over too, because then Christian said he's like, throw the over.
And I mean, and it just broke it up.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So just a really, really heady play by him and a really athletic play.
Well, yeah, it's heady, but you can't pull that. I couldn't pull that off.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
yes. No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
It was high football IQ play.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like certain guys can do things like that where other guys can't.
Right.
I can bait you that way because I have the speed, meaning Christian Gray,
right,
to accelerate and get that.
Right.
And if it wasn't for the freak show play that Benjamin Morrison had, that would have been the coverage play of the day. Right. And so that was good to see. That was good to see.
Yeah, it was really good to see.
He's just a more and today's practice was just more geared towards Christian than it was Jaden. Yeah, there's going to be days where they're doing different coverages and different looks where it's going to be more geared towards him. Clarence Lewis obviously had some struggles in coverage. I mean, he played boundary today. Deion Colsey did some work on him in one-on-ones. I mean, it was like, this is why he needs to be playing nickel and safety.
Yeah,
he's a good 100%. Football player. He's just not a man cover guy.
Right.
He just isn't.
It's just not his game. Not his game.
And they were able to get him on several throws in that regard. So, and that's the one interesting thing, Vince, that does have me a little bit concerned about the cornerback room is they have really good talent, but right now the depth is a little bit thin because some guys that aren't there yet. Like, I didn't see Chance Tucker today.
No, he wasn't.
And so I'm not sure what the deal is there. He's on the roster, but I didn't see him today. And so, and then of course Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs aren't on the team yet. They're still in high school.
Sure.
So you need Clarence to be out there for right now.
Well, and Jordan Clark obviously didn't take part in
and he's not a corner
7-on-7. Right, he's nickel.
Right, but which means you could put Micah Bell maybe outside a little bit. But the reality is if Benjamin goes down, you're going to have to move Christian there basically at this point in time, because Clarence or you're going to have to change your coverage structure because Clarence is just not able to play man. Now, he had a couple nice plays in some of the more short yardage situations, but in the 1-on-1s and 7-on-7s, when it's open up and run, I mean, that was it. Was it an in route that Deion just had him? I mean, just smoked him out of the top end. I'm trying to remember it might have been a post, but he just kind of stemmed him up, got inside, leaned him out, and then just Clarence fell for it in a way you don't expect a fifth-year senior to fall for it. And then Deion beaks him inside, and he's wide open, makes the play.
Yeah. Right.
And those matchups, those were some really good wins by Deion today when he was matched up against Clarence was. And we didn't get to see him against Benjamin today. I didn't see him take a single rep against Benjamin today. That's just who he was going against.
No, I didn't either.
We forgot to mention Deion during the receiver portion, but yeah, he had some really good wins today during 1-on-1s and 7-on-7s when the ball came his way. So yeah, he beat him on a over route, had a really nice play on the outcut, and yeah, he did some good things today.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Clarence did get one win on him though during one-on-ones at the end. They ran a quick in route and Clarence just had the angle to play it right away, but it was a quick game. That's where Clarence thrives. You know what I'm talking about? It was like at the end of one-on-ones, they were throwing to the left. Dion tried to stem him up to beat him inside on a quick under route, like a quick in route, but like Clarence, the way he was playing, there was no vertical threat. That's in a game situation, you're throwing to the guy behind him.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? But in the one-on-one, you still take the shot. Clarence broke it up. It's a really nice play.
Sure.
But wasn't a whole lot the receiver's going to do about that one, but
right.
But that's where he's at his best.
Sure.
Is more in those situations where he can play. That's why I think he'd be so good at safety.
Yes, I was just going to took the words out of my mouth. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Because he's not going to be able to keep up with these athletic, even big athletic wide receivers. He needs to be able to have some space in between them. Needs to be able to play downhill. Needs to be able to react. Use his brains to his ability, to his advantage, which is what he can do at safety, as opposed to playing a corner. So I agree with you on that front. Do we want to talk nickel here, or do we want to say kind of go corner nickel?
If
safety?
You want to talk about nickels, go for it. I didn't really get to see a lot from the nickels today, to be honest with you. They didn't play a ton. Micah Bell, I thought, was good. He's the only nickel we really saw today.
He was the only one we saw. And then in the press conference, Freeman talked about the fact that it's going to be Clark, and then Clarence Lewis is going to be practicing. It sounds like he's going to be primarily at nickel if they start going that direction as a base defense, and then Micah Bell would be after him. So I thought that was interesting.
Maybe. From what I've been told by some sources, I think Micah Bell is being potentially groomed there. I think there's a chance that Clarence is going to play a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah. That's a good call. I think that's probably your best bet. That's one of the reasons you brought him back. He's going to provide depth. And intelligent depth at different places. So.
Mike is still a bit of a work in progress technically, but he looked more confident today than he did last year. Played downhill really effectively, looked to be in position to make some tackles in the screen game, but obviously you're not allowed to tackle. So
right. Agreed.
He's still kind of susceptible to double moves, but he's got such great speed that he can catch up to it. But, the technical part's still a work in progress, but I thought he looked more comfortable, looked stronger. Today,
and it's the first time we've seen him at nickel, so this is going to be a new position for him.
In practice,
practice, So let's move to safety. Some interesting safety nuggets, I guess, is the best way to put it. I thought safety, obviously. Look, we don't have to talk a whole lot about Xavier Watts. Xavier Watts is the reigning defensive player of the year. Still,
his
really
practice
good.
didn't start off well though.
Why do you say that?
Greathouse destroyed him.
In a one-on-one
rep. Destroyed.
Greathouse looked really good today. I mean,
you're like, what's going on, Xavier? And then you're like, that's Jaden Greathouse is just that good. But I mean, it was a really good rep by Jaden Greathouse. But after that, Xavier looked like Xavier.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was all over the field in 7-on-7 and in team and all of that. And I thought, honestly, he took more of a leadership role back there as well, kind of getting some guys into position, because he played next to Adon Schuler the entire time. Adon Schuler was running with the ones. And because I was watching defensive individual drills during individual period, and Brian was watching offense. And so the one guy that stuck out to me was Adon Schuler. I was like, man, who's number 8? He's looking just smooth. He looks long. He looks athletic. He looks confident. And then we get into 7-on-7 and team, and I didn't see a drop off. I thought he looked really good, and he's going to compete for some playing time back there. I was impressed with the way he played today.
The only time Adon didn't look great was during one-on-ones, and that's kind of pretty much always going to be the case. Right. Because he's not a great one-on-one cover guys dude, but that's not the role you're asking him to play. DJ Brown looked even worse in those situations.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
He plays that boundary safety, which is a zone. It's a roll to the center position. I thought he looked very comfortable coming downhill, very confident coming downhill, and got downhill quickly. He's a rock. I mean, you look at him physically, he is a rock. And so he's that guy, Vince, that to me, I wasn't expecting Adon to look good today. Adon's that he's got to have the pads on to look good kind of guy. So the fact that he did stand out in certain situations on a day like today was a positive sign. Again, just one day, but he was taking good angles downhill. He wasn't like undercutting routes, which were letting him get down. I mean, downfield, he wasn't overplaying the ball, which allows things to cut behind him. I thought he did a good job. He's very active. Yeah. He's just a much better kind of zone type of guy, which is how Notre Dame uses their safeties. It's man outside, zone inside, kind of to put it very, very
vanilla
simplified. And so I was impressed. Now, you're never going to be fully impressed with Adon until the pads comes on. Is because when Adon's at his best is when he's popping people. But I thought he moved really well today. Yeah, and I know you're going to go to him next, Vince, but I also thought the same of Luke Talich. I thought, but very different athletes. That's the thing. They're very different athletes. But Adon looked comfortable being with the ones. Like he didn't look like he was pressing. He didn't look like he was guessing. He didn't look he would look at Xavier. They would get the communication. Adon would say something back, and then boom, he's moving where he's supposed to move.
Yeah.
And that was a good sign.
Good
first day for Adon.
And you talked about Talich, and obviously he's going to be on scholarship now, which we've known for a while now, which is fantastic for him. I mean, it took him a semester to prove that he belonged on scholarship. I think that's awesome. But I thought the combination of Minnick and Talich, I thought they looked pretty good back there, to be honest with you. I thought they played off of each other very well. They were the second team safeties that would come onto the field. I thought that they played off each other well today. Whether they will be the second team safeties moving forward or not, I thought that they did a good job together. I like the tandem. I like the tandem of the two of those guys.
They complement each other well. I think Luke is so rangy. And as I think we said this earlier, but he is on scholarship now. Marcus Freeman talked about that, obviously, during his press conference, and he said that was kind of always the plan, which we all knew. Everybody here knew, in this chat knew, because we've talked about it.
Right.
The question would it be after 1 year or 2 years? So that's
it was after half a year. It's after a semester.
It was like a semester. Yeah. and so it was good, but it was good to see him back, period, because he had that shoulder injury late in the year that cost him last 3 games. Right. And you're just like, is he gonna be able to be back in the spring and be full go? And he was.
Good. He looked good.
Really aggressive downhill, really rangy. And you could just see, like, when he would arrive at blockers, he arrives with some force, even when he's not necessarily trying to. I didn't see him in coverage. So again, we weren't watching the same things all the time. So
right.
I know you had a note in there of him having a really good coverage play against Henry Garrity in your breakdown. I didn't see that route. And I like Henry Garrity as a player, but he's another walk on.
Sure.
Henry's a good football player. I mean, we've talked about him before, but it's not like beating Cooper Flanagan. It's just not the same. But still, absolutely. Like I said, Henry Garrity's a good pass-catching young tight end. We've talked about this when he was coming out, when we had him on our show on Sunday. This is a kid that can play it like a Purdue, Miami of Ohio. I mean, it's a Division I football player, in my opinion. But so that was a good win. Outside of that, I didn't see him in any of the one-on-ones. I thought 7-on-7. The only thing about Luke is he's going to have to make sure it looked like on a couple times maybe he should have been the one kind of running vertical, and he was kind of coming downhill when some seams were coming open.
Okay.
So that's going to have to be that's an assumption I'm making based on how why the guys came open. So he plays downhill, and he's going to have to make sure he's not too aggressive getting downhill. But man, the kid can move really well. Really well. Like we said, Vince, he was never a walk-on in the true sense of being when we think walk-on, you think undersized guy, or maybe he's not athletic enough. This is a kid that had an offer from Utah. It's one of the 10, 15 best defensive programs in college football the last 10 years. And so he's a good football player. And now it's official. I can take the asterisk off his name on the roster.
Right.
He's a talented football player, and just watching those two run around. And I know you said this during the practice. I didn't get a chance to see much of him, but I know a guy that you were really impressed by, Vince, today, as far as just looking the part and looking comfortable. A guy that you mentioned to me when we were going through practice was Ben Minnick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I thought he looked really good. I remember looking at my sheet multiple times, like, wait, who's 13 again? Because he was just moving really, really well.
And he changed his number.
Yeah,
Because
right.
last year he was 22.
This is exactly, absolutely accurate. And we know, and that's the other, we'll talk about the other white jerseyed 22. And I got to watch myself, right?
Well, it's not the new white 22.
The new white jerseyed number 22, which we will get to. But I thought
the panic in your eye as a public school teacher when you sent that was hilarious. They knew what you meant, Vince. They knew what you meant.
Trouble. But no, I thought he moved around really, really well for his size, like because he's only 6 foot, right? And so at first you're like, man, is he going to be big enough to play safety? But he seems to be in the right place all the time, man, and he seems to make plays. And the way he comes downhill,
still a question.
Yeah,
that is still a question.
And the way he comes downhill, I really like it. He comes down with authority. And I remember multiple times seeing him make plays last year when they put the pads on. So that's going to be another aspect that we still need to see because they didn't have pads on today. But I really like the way he played today. I thought he looked smooth. I thought he looked confident in where he was playing with the twos. And so, I mean, there's some dudes out there playing with the twos, and he didn't look out of place. He still looks small. I will say that. Still looks small, but he plays big. So.
Yeah, he's really a natural athlete. If any safety outside of Watts you could describe as potentially twitchy, he would be it. I mean, he's got some suddenness as an athlete. That's the one. Now that's going off of drills. I didn't really see him during the teams or the one-on-one, so I can't speak to that. But just watching him go through drills, you're just like, okay, that guy can move. But he just. The question about him is able to hold up is still there because you could see it today, Vince. Like there's he's small, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thin wise. He's gonna have to and he got banged up a lot last year, but yeah, he can move. He can move. There's no doubt about that. He can
too.
run.
I mean, he's just a small kid. He's just gonna have to keep putting on that armor. He's gonna have to keep lifting and all of that if he wants to be a player for the team. I mean, he's a great practice player. But yeah, I don't think he's ready for Saturdays yet. But he always, like I said, he's not ready maybe physically, but he's always seems to be where he needs to be. And so that's half the battle, obviously. Now, the other, like I was mentioning before, Devin Ford has traded in his blue practice jersey for a white practice jersey, and he is now officially a safety. And it even says it on the roster that he's a safety now. And I thought Marcus Freeman's explanation, because we obviously we noticed it in practice and we were watching him and all of that, but I thought that it was a very interesting explanation. So Devin Ford has embraced the fact that he is an elite special teams player. He's starting on 4+ special teams. And one of the things that they talked about, I'm guessing in probably a post-season, interview or whatever, one of the things he needs to work on is tackling. And so since probably the reps at running back are probably few and far between with the running back room that we had just discussed, he has decided, and the coaches have decided to move him over to safety so that he can focus more on tackling from a special team standpoint. I think that, like I said, I just think that's fascinating that he moves to the other side of the ball so that he can be a better special teams player. I was impressed by that.
That's a first.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. That's a first.
Neither have I.
That's a first. Vince, it's also not – I wasn't as moved by the comment as you were initially. and here's why I say that. I say that kind of half jokingly because the thing is like, he's only been here a year, but it's kind of like, that's kind of been Devin Ford's attitude the minute he got to Notre Dame. It's whatever you need me to do, coach. I'll do it. I mean, you want me to be a lead blocker at 205 pounds against Ohio State? I'll do it, coach. And he did it well.
Yeah,
right.
You
know what I mean? Like,
you're not wrong.
That. Notre Dame went into the game against Ohio State with a game plan where Devin Ford, who was listed at like 195 pounds last year, was going to be a lead blocker on Ohio State's linebackers. That was their game plan. And you know what Devin Ford did? he blocked really well against Ohio State's linebackers. And
Sure did.
And that's just the kind of kid he's been since he got here, Vince. It's like, you want me to be the kick returner? I'll be the kick returner. Okay, you don't want me to be the kick returner? Maybe the lead blocker on the kick returns? I'll do that.
Right.
You need me to run down on kickoffs? I'll do that. You need me to be the third down back? I'll do that. You need me to block? I'll do that. You need me to run? I'll do that. And this is a former top 100 recruit.
Yeah.
You know, that could say, screw this. I'm going to Ball State and I'm going to run for 1,000 yards. It probably could. You know, and it's just like, you just love kids like that. You need, let me just say that it's not even that you love them. You need kids like that on your football
100%.
team. You need kids to say, Coach, dude, I want to win. I want to help this team win. This is my path. Then let me be the best I can be at it. That's basically what it like. Look, I'm not going to be the NFL running back I thought I was coming out of high school. I'm not, but I still want to play and I still want to do this. I still want to do that. And if this is my path forward, then I'm going to do whatever it takes to be the best I can be at it. And you're just like, dude, you not only love kids like that, you need kids like that.
Sure.
I promise you the 1988 title team had guys like that. I promise you Michigan had dudes like that last year. Like, you need kids like that if you're going to really be that kind of program.
Yeah. It feels like from the outside looking in, there's just not as many kids like that as there used to be. But those are the kids that just don't get the press. They just don't get the accolades that we all want them to get, right? And so I guess that's why it was refreshing for me to hear. I love a kid like that, because you're right. You do need players and kids with that mindset, and that's what helps make a championship team.
But I just kind of chuckled when you were all excited about it, and I was like, I don't get it. And then I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that's not normal. But just for him, it just seems so normal. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
right. It's true.
Figures
Which
Devin
you're absolutely right about.
Right.
You're absolutely right about. I just, like I said, it's a first for me. I've never heard anything like that before. Like, you're changing your position so you're better on special teams. Like, like mind blown for me.
Why? Because I can help the team. Right. And maybe find a niche at the next level, but so I can help the team. You got to love stuff like, you got to love kids like that. You really do.
Right.
Really
and look, he's going to be out of place at safety for a while. I mean, it's completely foreign to him.
He played hard.
Absolutely.
No clue where he was going half the time, but he played hard.
Zero clue. But
and that'll come.
Absolutely.
That'll come.
Absolutely. Like, I do not anticipate him getting time at safety during the season. I don't anticipate that, right? But he's going to practice his butt off, and you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know, injuries and all that fun stuff. I mean, you just never know. But he's going to be a dog on special teams. I can promise you that. So that was
you just know this is going to happen. There's going to be some situation this year where Devin Ford's forced to play.
Right.
And he's going to come in on the first couple plays and just look bad and get beat for a 20-yard gain. And then they're going to go at him again, and he's going to like pick it off or like knock the receiver, down, and ball goes in the air. And some, you know what I mean? Like, you just know the way that kid is. He's going to find his way to a big play at some point in time this year in that situation. You know what I mean? And
love it.
And team guys like that, especially in this day and age of NIL. Like, did you see Nick Saban's comments the other day
about all the guys that went to him after the season?
Yeah, and he's like, all they wanted to know is guaranteed playing time or how much money I was going to pay him. It's like, that's not how we won 7 championships. And like, there's so much of that now,
right? And
we're making it sound okay, like that's normal. Right? That's not normal. That's not acceptable.
No, it's not.
And it's like, and when the greatest coach of our generation is like, I can't even get guys to buy in, you're like, this is a problem. So when you have a former top 100 recruit that has that level of buy-in, you praise kids like that.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of attitude that permeates that your locker room and says, hey, we can go out and be something because everybody's buying into their role.
Yep.
And that's the key.
Absolutely.
That's the key.
So that's the defensive side of the ball. Let's touch on special teams here real quick before we jump into the super chats. Hey, man, look, there's not much to talk about. Obviously, Mitch Jeter, this was his first practice.
I'm sorry, I gotta stop you first. So we're going through the stretch, and I look out, and Vince is way on the other side of the field, and I go, I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm recording this, or I'm watching." He wasn't recording. I'm watching this for Dylan. I'm taking notes.
I was recording it. No, I was recording it.
Yeah, and I was like, "Dude, I'm paying you to be today." Like, what are you doing, man? Vince has become a special teams freak.
Yeah.
I just had to bust your chops a little bit about that. But yes, Vince, what did you see from the specialists today?
Well, first of all, I was also in a great position to get defensive individual video when they came over to me because I was hanging out in that area. But that's beside the point. No, so they did their normal deal where they have 2 sets of field goal units going at the same time, and they kind of start here and they kind of work their way around like this, and they all end up kicking the same amount of field goals, but they do it at the same time. So they got 2 units going at the same time. Obviously, Mitch Jeter was working with the ones, and Marcelo Diomede, and I butchered his name. There's a guarantee there. He was the second string kicker. And Mitch Jeter started off with a 45-yarder right down the pipe. I mean, right down the middle. He looked great in almost all of his kicks. His final 2 kicks, he pushed them both to the side or to the right. Marcello or however you say his first name. And again, I apologize, my friend, if you're watching, but did not look great. And I said this to Brian. I said, there is a severe drop-off from number 1 to number 2, if that is who number 2 is in the kicking game. So everybody better hope and pray.
What'd you like?
Doesn't get hurt.
What'd you like about what you saw from Mitch Jeter today?
He is consistent, number 1. When he kicks the ball, it's not like a Spencer Schrader ball where it just booms off of his foot, or for that matter, the little guy who was here 2 years ago, who's kicking for the Saints. Why is his name escaping my brain? Little number 99. The ball like jumped off of his foot. Like it made a different noise.
Zach Yoakum?
No. The starter.
Oh, you're talking about Blake Groupie.
Thank you, Groupie.
Yeah, a couple years
ago. The ball
ago,
just exploded off his foot. I mean, he's 5'8", and the ball would just explode off of his foot.
He's 5'8" and skinny.
Yes, little itty bitty dude. I mean, it looked like somebody's little brother out there, right? But Mitch Jeter's different. Like the ball, it doesn't make that same noise when the ball comes off of his foot, but he is incredibly accurate. I don't think he's going to have, obviously, the distance that Spencer Schrader had, but his accuracy is so much better. Spencer Schrader was kind of like a quarterback where you never really know where the ball is going to go when you throw it. Same thing with the way he was kicking, but it was always impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch Jeter's different. He's consistent. It's down the middle almost every single time. I'd have to look to see why he pushed 2 of them to the right, but every other one was right in between the pipes. I mean, it was really impressive. And then we jump over to punting.
Well, and real quick, that's what they brought him here for.
Yeah,
right. He's not going to be kicking any. He's not going to be breaking Spencer Schrader's longest field goal in Notre Dame history record.
Not a chance.
But that's not what they brought him here for. They brought him here to make sure that he's at 85, 90% makes, which is more important to me than
absolutely.
Can you hit a 58-yarder?
Right,
in my view. So
the big legs get you noticed. The accuracy gets you playing time. Like that.
The accuracy helps you win football games.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. So then we move over to McPherson. Obviously, he's been on the team for a while. We all know Bryce. He can be inconsistent, but he had a lot of height on his ball. One hit the ceiling at one point, kind of hit it off the side of his foot a little bit, but it hit the ceiling. So it got up there. His first punt pushed the return man all the way back to the goal line, and I think he was kicking from about the 20, for the 25-yard line. And so no surprise there. He still has a big leg. When he can turn it over, man, like that ball goes. The biggest thing for Bryce is he needs to be more consistent. I mean, that's honestly the biggest thing for him. If he can be more consistent, not have a few of those shanks at bad times, they're going to be just fine. But overall, it's the same Bryce that we've seen from the get. And then punt returners in no particular order was, let's see, who was it? It was Greathouse. It was Jaden Mickey. It was Jabron Payne, and who was the last one?
Well, we saw Jordan Faison back there too with them, even though
and Jadarian Price. Yeah. So it was and Faison. That's when I first noticed Faison, actually, was when he was back there, because they were kind of all by themselves. So those are the guys that were returning punts. So here we go.
Yep.
Special teams. I mean, that's all we saw from special teams. I mean, you're not going to see any coverage units or anything crazy like that.
And there's a chance their long snapper might be shorter than Blake Groupie. Reno is not tall.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong about that. Yeah.
51. Was he with the second group?
He was with the twos. They had the freshman, Joseph Vinci, Vinci. Yeah. He was with the ones. Yeah.
He was rated by some as the best long snapper in the country last year.
Yeah, he was.
How did he look? I mean, did you notice anything about the snaps?
As far as I could tell, it was clean. McPherson was the holder with the ones, and the Devisen was the holder for the twos.
Who was playing running back today, by the way, not quarterback.
Correct.
How about on punts? Was Vincey also the guy on punts?
You know what? I didn't notice. I didn't notice who was snapping. So you're making fun of me so much for watching the special teams. I didn't pay that close of attention. So that's what happens when you get bullied.
You're so sensitive.
But hey, we did see Eric Goins punt a few too. So
it's a great story.
Walk on, it's a great story,
by the way.
100%. So
we were kind of joking with him, like he looks like he's about 10 years older than everybody else. You know what I mean? Like just the way he's dressed, it was like, he kind of looks like he's closer in age to us than he is to the freshman on the team. But
he got off a couple good punts. He was
consistency is going to be the issue for him, Vince. 100%. I mean, it's just like but he got a couple of them. You're like, okay, and I think I like about him too is he can do both.
Yeah,
he can place kick and punt. He did both. It was at the Citadels where he was, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
he did both.
Mm-hmm.
He was a field goal kicker and their punter and a kickoff guy. So that's where I'm curious to see him this spring. Is if we get a chance to see them do any kickoffs.
That's true. Because remember, Bryce McPherson was going to be the kickoff man 2 years ago when he was a true freshman, and then he got hurt, and so he didn't end up kicking off. And I remember in the spring,
and then Groupie, right?
Everybody was like, man, he can just boot the ball, and then he got hurt, and we never really saw it. And so I'm wondering if he's going to get another shot at kickoffs or who's that?
Be curious.
Who end up being.
Yeah, I'd like to see him and Goins and see of those guys like who ends up being that kickoff kind of guy.
Right. Yeah.
This season. Now Mitch Jeter has done kickoffs for South Carolina as well, so he could also be in that conversation. So
yeah, for sure. Well, everybody will get a shot, and it depends on how they want to do kickoffs. Like, do they just want somebody booting out of the back of the end zone, or are they wanting to position, situationally put it in the like a coffin corner? So that they can bring it out, that they want them to bring it out, or is it just always going to be in the end zone? Like in high school, you want a guy that's just always going to put it in the end zone because you're starting on the 20. And high school offenses have a hard time going 80. You know what I mean? So you're always wanting to put it in the end zone. College is a little more situational, a little bit different.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what that strategy looks like.
Yeah, it certainly will. So that's going to wrap it up, Vince, for practice day. We do have a couple super chats we want to get to before we get out of here.
Yeah, let's do it. Charlie Weiss's last bell loop. Thanks for the super chat, my man. Hey, Coach and Vince, man, this is going to be my 4th season with IB. I'm really excited to continue to see the legendary era of Freeman continue in front of my eyes. I said this when ND won the Gator Bowl. This is the start of a run.
I hope so.
Me too.
I mean, there's still a lot to prove, but I hope so.
Sure.
I mean,
there's a lot to like,
Vince,
though, too.
Just today, just thinking about I almost asked him this question, but I knew he would deflect it, and I didn't want to put him in a position to deflect it. But I wanted to be, when I was talking about linebackers, like, look, this is now the room you recruited.
Right.
It's Jack Kaiser and then a bunch of dudes you recruited.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're all his recruits now.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about that. Like, they just move different. The guys that are Freeman recruits, like when you look at Christian Gray and Benjamin Morrison did not get offered by Notre Dame's coaching staff prior to Marcus Freeman being hired as defensive coordinator. And, it's just like Jalen Sneed did not have an offer prior to Marcus Freeman being hired. This is after the new year. I mean, so like the whole season of their junior years, they didn't get offers from Notre Dame. And then he comes in and he offers that guy, he gets this guy. And you're just like, he's changed it. Now we get to find out if that's groups as good as we hope it's going to be.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting about it. And like you said, you saw steps last year, but you saw some steps back and then some big steps forward at times and then steps back and now it's time to take that big step forward. But when you watch it today, man, you're just like, I've been in a lot of these practices and you're just like I said to you, I was like, dude, am I overreacting to what I saw receiver today? And you're like, not at all, and it's just like, you feel really good about it. And yeah, I'm excited about it. And he said in front of our eyes because he is a part of IB Nation.
Ah, yeah.
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Well, And I will also say, based on Marcus Freeman's reaction when he came into the press conference, look, you can kind of read Marcus Freeman. He's kind of he wears his emotions on his
He's a pretty
sleeve kind of a
book.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had a permanent smile on his face during the
Well,
press conference.
yeah, he even said, like, I'm just thinking about where we were a year ago.
Yeah.
Which was his second spring, and he's like, we're still teaching guys how to practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's talked about how, and he's right. I mean, today was just a really smooth, fluid, like everybody out there get going.
It went by quickly.
This is what we talked about in the defensive show yesterday. Like, in the first year of Al Golden, it's like there was no leadership.
Right.
It was impossible to have leadership in that regard because nobody had played in that defense before.
Exactly.
And what I mean by that is there was no veteran to go to and say, hey, what am I supposed to do here? Because if you're like, if you were Jalen Steed and you're a freshman, or Josh Burnham and you're a freshman, and you're like, hey, JD Bertrand, I'm supposed to do here. And JD's like, I don't know. Just learn this the same time you did, man.
Trying to figure this out too.
Whereas like last year, Drake Bowen, one of the reports I had yesterday was that I had been told by a couple sources actually that all year JD Bertrand like took Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury to different degrees, like under his wing, and like grooming him to be his replacement someday.
I love that.
And you're like, you love that leadership, but like that wasn't possible the year before. JD didn't have anyone like that for Al Golden's defense. And so like the point is like now even young guys like Christian Gray and Micah Bell and they've been through these practices before now.
Right.
And they have a better, like this is Adon Schuler's a freshman. This is his second spring. This is Drake's second spring. This, you know what I mean? So like you just see a greater sense of we know what we're doing and we're playing with more confidence. And that allows them to put that athleticism that is so impressive on full display.
Absolutely.
And that's what's good to see.
From Aiden Benami, thank you very much for the super chat. Best thing each of you saw today, play/culture, etc.
I mean, honestly, I should have let you bring this question up before I start talking about what I just talked about. It's the speed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the speed in which they play the game, Vince, is just really impressive. It's everywhere. I mean, it's running back, wide receiver, corner, linebacker, DN. There's just really athletic dudes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun. I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but like the stereotypical SEC team, big O lineman, and then speed outside. That's kind of what Notre Dame's offense looked like this year.
Not wrong.
You got this mass 6'8" right tackle. It's 320 something. Your left tackle's 330, 6'7", and it's just like, man, these guys are, Billy Stroud is only listed 305, but he looks way bigger than that. Like he looks big. And then you've got this speed on the outside, and you're just like, because when they lined up, it was Jaden Thomas in the boundary as the one, Jaden Greathouse in the slot as the one, and then Chris Mitchell's the one. And you're just like, this is just a different looking group. And with all due respect to Rico Flores, like these guys all move at a different speed than he does.
Oh,
that's
100%.
the thing is like they're just so much faster than they were a year ago. And how they play. Like even Chris Tyree was a really fast guy, but Chris was still learning receiver a year ago. He didn't really know how to play receiver a year ago. Jaden Greathouse has been playing. I mean, he's caught thousands of balls in practices and games as receiver. So it's that. It's just they play really fast.
Yeah.
And for a first day of practice, you kind of expect that because there's no pads and all that. But even then, they move really well.
Yep. Andy Milton fan, thanks for the super chat. Kickers are real players with real feelings. That's directed at you, pal.
I'll agree with the second part of that. They certainly have real feelings.
Ouch. It's all right. I had no respect for kickers before I birthed
I know.
One, so it's all right.
Well, I didn't raise one.
Raised one, yeah. Although, hey, remind me, I got to tell you something about next year with him. Okay. Anyway, Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Thanks for another super chat. Hey, dumb question. But what does this mean for Marcus Freeman's title, Dick Corbett head football coach? Thank you.
That means Dick Corbett is the person who gave the endowment to basically support that position.
Yes.
I don't know if he pays the entire salary or a big part of it or what the case may be, but Mr. Corbett's just a big supporter of the program. Mm-hmm. The special teams or the strength coaches like the Trematera family strength, director. It's just I know I don't know if I
Let's
should
see.
say his name, but he's a Notre Dame grad, loves Notre Dame, supports
Right.
Notre Dame. This is his way of supporting the program.
Yep.
You've got Pat Eilers, Pat and Jane Eilers
It
is
is
the
Pat
DB
and
coach.
Jana, Jana.
Jana
Yeah.
Eilers, defensive backs coach
Yeah.
is what Mike Mickens is. That former player at Notre Dame, very successful businessman, and so he endows it so that way, hey, it's like raising money, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you give X amount of dollars
Yep.
in order to have your name
It's
on
just
it.
like naming a field or something
Right.
after a company
Right.
or there's multiple.
Right.
And I believe the head basketball coach for both men's and women's are endowed by somebody.
And
I
you're
don't know
seeing
all of
more
them,
and more
but
of that at a lot of schools, but Notre Dame does that a ton.
because it's a great way to raise money and
Yeah.
it's a great way to get your name
And it's
out.
consistent money. It's like you're committing to
Yes.
it every year.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
you give $1 million once and then you've got
and
your
you get
name
your
on it
name on a
forever.
building,
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Right. Tom Mendoza doesn't have his name on the building because he gave money once. Like what I mean is like you can say, hey, I want this,
Sure.
but those guys tend to be like Tom Mendoza didn't stop supporting Notre Dame when he got his name on a building,
Right.
or the business school. It's that was a byproduct of his support of this institution and what it stands for.
Right.
Same thing with these people. It's yes, it's money, but it's support.
Right. Because they don't just take anybody's money. I mean, it's yeah.
When it's also where's the donation coming from? It's yes, exactly. I would like to get my name. If I'm giving you millions of dollars, I want my name associated with it. You'd be silly not to. But it's because of I want to support the program. I've been blessed. Like Pat Eilers, this place blessed me. I want to bless it back.
Right.
It's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
I don't say it in articles because it just doesn't flow well. I don't say the Dick Corbett head football coach. It's no disrespect to Mr. Corbett or what he does. It's just, guys,
it's a lot of words.
Right.
It's a lot of words. And I think at least half of the football staff has an endowment connected to their title.
Yeah. I'm actually going to look at that now, Vince, because it's several. So I know. You've got the Joe Moore offensive line coach. I'm very curious where that endowment comes from.
Yeah, that's
true. Is that from, like
that might just almost be honorary too.
But you've got the Bob. So Dick Corbett head coach, Bob Hinton defensive coordinator, John and Bobby Arlotta family offensive coordinator, special teams receivers, Bob and Leslie Moore family quarterbacks coach. You've got the Pat and Jana Eilers DB coach, the Joe Moore offensive line coach, and then the Trematera family director of football operations. And so, yes,
that's cool.
A lot of them.
Yeah, a bunch of them. Like I said, it's
half. That is half.
Well.
That's 6.
Oh, there you go.
If you include the strength coach, which is 12 coaches.
Yeah.
Or 13 coaches. So it's about half.
Yeah.
Pretty cool deal. And it's not a dumb question because I guarantee you there's a lot of people that have that same question.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Iden with another super chat. Thank you very much. Did Marcus Freeman seem organized in practice and he knew where to be, etc.? What is one thing today you already notice is different with this offense than last year?
The way that they use motion. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. I don't get too much into it, but there were things they were doing today where they were using formations and motions. And Vince, I'm about to, you and Sean are just laughing the whole time. I'm just losing it. Like, I've been saying this for, you know what I mean? Like, it's about freaking time. You know what I mean? It's like, and it would work. They would use motion and run a route concept off of it, and the guy comes wide open against one of the best pass defenses in college football. And I'm like, this isn't rocket science. You're like, for 5 minutes, I'm just going off in the middle of practice. I feel so bad for Sean and Vince. But it's just one of those things where it's like, what you're wasting opportunities not doing this stuff. And it wasn't even like major stuff. It wasn't like David Shaw 2011 vintage Stanford pre-snap movement. It's just using different motions and little things to gain leverage, to get a guy in a position to open up route concepts. And there's Vince, the route concepts used today are very different than stuff we've seen in recent years. Like, and I won't get into specifics of what because I want to be asked back, but definitely a lot of different stuff. And not so much. There's not nearly as much static one-on-one route stuff. It's all kind of it's meant to, hey, put this guy in a bind, and what he does is going to determine where we go with the ball.
Yeah,
on a more vertical plane as opposed to the horizontal stuff that we've seen in the past. So that was
it's great,
a much improved. And then of course we've already talked about this. The one big change is a ton of inside zone, and I I don't feel like I'm giving that away because anyone that's got, YouTube, right? Any team that Notre Dame plays that has YouTube can watch Mike Denbrock's film at
Right.
LSU, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame and be like, they're going to run a lot of inside zone.
Right.
So that one I don't feel like I'm giving away. But pass game stuff will change from team to team more so with the talent you have. And so I don't want to give too much of that stuff away.
Full house backfield, 1849. I'm sure that means something. You might have to help me out with that one. But thank you for the super chat.
Is what they did.
Well, that part I know. I'm talking about the amount.
No, 1849. Isn't that like when Notre Dame started?
That was 1842.
1849. I don't know what 1849 is.
Yeah.
So I wasn't.
That's okay. Yet. Anyway,
I
didn't hear anyone ask about it in the press conference. Did you?
1849 North Notre Dame Avenue. It's the address of the school.
Oh, shoot. I had no idea. Okay, cool. Did you observe any prep for helmet comms in practice? Could IB consider asking about their plan for that in a future conference? Maybe. Well, it's not approved yet. Yeah, it's not approved yet. So there's nothing that they can really do at practice.
It's a good question. It'd be more of a summer, preseason, fall camp question if they pass the rule.
Because I don't think they rule on that until the end of April, maybe.
Something
and so it won't have anything to do with spring ball. But it's definitely something that we'll talk about, I'm sure, come fall camp. So now I didn't see anybody doing any gestures or anything, but it was
they weren't doing any of that today.
Yeah, it was day one. So.
Right.
And Michael Ryan, thanks for the super chat. You guys look like kids in a candy store. Glad the team looks good.
Yeah, they did.
Day one, they did.
Or in your top 10 preseason team, if you don't look good that's the thing is if you don't look good on the first day of practice, then that's a problem. So, this was fun to see. We got to see what they look like. There wasn't anything that's like big red flag, which you don't want to see on day one. But you expect a lot of teams to look good on day one. I'm sure Florida State's going to look good on day one. I'm sure Texas A&M is going to look good on day one. When you got athletes, you're going to look good on day one. So this isn't meant to be like natty, here we come. But I'm not afraid to say I had high expectations for what I was going to see today, and it met my expectations, and in some instances exceeded my expectations. Like I've said recently in shows, like I'm pushed back on people. Oh, the receiving core, they got to show me. That's fine, that's fair. But guys, the talent is what it is.
Yeah,
you can't punish the current group of players and coaches who had nothing to do with failures of the past. You know what I mean? But I get that. But you saw today, you're like, yep, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So yeah, today was a fun day. There's no doubt about that. And it's just it's mean-spirited that we have to wait like 2 weeks to see this team again. But they have spring break and I'm sure a well-needed time off for the student side of the student athletes. But, I'm selfish. It feels like a very long time before we get to see this team again. But day one was great. I really enjoyed watching these guys run around today for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right. That is going to do it for today's show. Everybody, thanks for stopping in. Thanks for checking it out. More info, obviously, on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you get on there. Check it out. Obviously, there's also articles to be read over at irishbreakdown.com. And so, there's just all kinds of stuff coming out of practice. But thanks for joining us on the podcast. Really appreciate that. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share with your family and friends. And then, of course, we've got IB Nation Sports Talk tonight at 6:00 with Jesse and Sean. And then tomorrow
recruiting hour.
Recruiting hour. Okay, awesome. And then, of course, prior to the recruiting hour, Notre Dame women play at 11 a.m. So you can watch Notre Dame women at 11 a.m. Just roll right into the show in the afternoon for the recruiting hour.
Watch it on TV. Listen to my guy Sean Stiers doing the play-by-play on the radio. That's how it rolls.
100%. 100%. It's fun. You will not regret it if you've never listened to Sean call the game. I can tell you that. And then just roll right in, get a bite to eat, and then roll right into IB Nation Sports Talk because we will be on at 5:00 because it is Friday Fire. All three of us will be there. It'll be a lot of fun. So keeping the content rolling, folks. So make sure you jump in and have a good time with us because we love it when you participate. So. For Brian, I'm Vince. We will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.